Chapter 392. The He family guards rushed towards Jin Qinhuang Fu at the fastest speed, not because they were worried that the battle would get bigger and bigger, but because they fought so fiercely, it would definitely attract the city guards. If they were caught by the city guards, it would be fine if they didn't resist. At most they would suffer some physical pain, and in the end, they would definitely be able to fish them out. But according to his understanding of the young master, the possibility was very small. Because he had been caught so many times in the past, it had already become an instinctive action, subconsciously counterattacking. This counterattack was definitely going to cause trouble. Therefore it was best to fish the young master out before he was taken away. Horses couldn't be ridden in the city, and they didn't even bring a horse out, so they could only rely on their 2 legs. Running too fiercely affected their old injuries, but that pain could be said that they were already used to it. It affected their movements, but it couldn't stop them from moving forward at such a fast speed. In front of Jin Qinhuang Fu's main gate, they supported their knees and gasped for breath. There was a piercing pain in their bones, but they couldn't care so much. In 2 or 3 steps forward, they quickly explained the sequence of events to the guards of Jin Qinhuang Fu, begging Jin Qinhuang to extend a helping hand and save their young master. Several guards looked at each other in dismay, but they still quickly reported the matter. Although the He family's young master was beaten by Wang Ye every time he came, in fact, He Zhihai was still a relatively special existence to the other people of Jin Qinhuang Fu. At least don't look at how Wang Ye beat people fiercely, in fact he was still considered to be fond of him. Other Wang Ye didn't have this kind of honor. Li Hongyuan was currently helping Jingwan prepare the paint. It seemed that he was in a leisurely mood. Hearing this matter in a flash, they knew who He Zhihai was up against. Speaking of which, in the previous life, although they didn't arrive together with the letter of credence, there was still the matter of a certain prince sneaking away. Although it wasn't like this time, he didn't run away immediately, but it still made people turn the sky upside down. In essence, the matter wasn't that exaggerated, it was just that they went in the wrong direction. They all thought that if the other party wanted to inquire about something, they would definitely go to a bustling place where it was easy to get close to the high officials or their family members. In reality, it was all like that. They ran to an area where the common people were more concentrated. In this life it still didn't change, but they bumped into He Zhihai, who wasn't in the capital in the previous life. The 2 people's temperaments were fundamentally different, but on the surface they were a bit similar. In the end they directly fought. In that case there was no need to waste time looking for him. No matter what, He Zhihai was one of his people. He could train him however he wanted, but the other party was an enemy. Moreover, he was one of the killing generals of the former way. He was vicious and merciless, a super butcher who killed, robbed and burned everything. No matter if it was a soldier or a commoner, they all met an abnormal end. Of course, that was a matter of several years later. In his previous life, many of Li Hongyuan's generals had died in his hands. However, at that time He Shi's reputation as the god of war had already spread. The other party was not afraid of anyone except He Shi. Every time they would avoid him. However, in the end, Li Hongyuan still set a trap for He Shi to kill them and hang them on the city wall to dry them up. This was to comfort the souls of the Qiyuan soldiers in heaven. In his previous life, the other party had lost his life the first time they met. In this life the 2 of them had fought the first time they met. It was really fate. Even so, Li Hongyuan did not want to kill this person. In this life he would be more useful. Li Hongyuan's face was calm, but his hands did not stop moving. Let an ego and bring him back. He unhurriedly mixed the colors that Jingwan needed and put down the brush. If I don't take the initiative to look for trouble, trouble will come knocking on my door. Wanwan, your husband has a hard life. Jingwan was now painting seriously. She had only heard about He Shi's matter. She was already used to a certain someone's occasional self-reproach. When Jingwan was free, she would accompany him as a form of entertainment. Now that she was busy, the more you paid attention to him, the more he would probably go on and on. But Li Hongyuan did not really want to disturb Jingwan. He washed his hands and slowly wiped them dry. I'll go and take care of this matter. Go. Jingwan's tone and expression seemed to carry a bit of disdain. Li Hongyuan did not go crazy this time. Before he left, he impolitely hugged Jingwan and kissed her twice, causing Jingwan to almost scratch the paper. In the end, Jingwan was so angry that she slapped him. Therefore, the living king of hell also understood the essence of, if the mountain doesn't come to me, then I'll go to the mountain. Li Hongyuan left the study and asked someone to call the He family's guards over because of the pain and because the people of Jin Qinhuang Fu had stopped him. He did not return. Li Hongyuan needed to know the cause and effect of the matter from his mouth. Only then could he decide how to deal with this matter. After listening, this matter was no longer a big deal. Under this kind of situation, Qiyuan and the former Wei seemed to be on good terms. But in reality, if they really encountered something, even the most pedantic, the most moderate, the most courteous, the group of people who always clamored that things could not be resolved by force, could not help but roll up their sleeves. The former Wei. Screw them to death. Let's ask, a country that was eyeing their own country covetously, and had always claimed that they were loyal and prepared to dedicate their lives to it. This land originally belonged to the former Wei. Qiyuan was a thief. No one would be able to tolerate this, all right. As long as they firmly pinned all the mistakes on the other party's head, then as long as they were not dead, the pedantic old men could use their mouths to flip the other party. No matter how capable your entire envoy group was, what were the odds of winning in a war of words? There were not many people who could debate with a group of scholars. Even if the other party had it, it did not mean that Qiyuan did not have it. Therefore, the final result was probably what Lu Qingdi and the others thought at the beginning. Serves them right, they were unlucky. In fact, He Zhihai was considered lucky. If it was any other country, even if it was just a small country, He Zhihai would have to pay a heavy price. Of course, the premise was that Li Hongyuan did not help him. If the living king of hell helped him, no matter who he was, he would have to retreat. The people who were beaten up did not care who they were. At most, they would have to pay some compensation. Could it be that they would really start a war just because of this? If they really did that, it could only mean that someone had wanted to fight for a long time. In this case, they could not blame He Zhihai. Even if they did not have him as an excuse, there would be other excuses. Anyway, it would not drag on for long. Originally, the city defense team should have arrived faster than an E. However, they ran to other places to recruit people and hurried over. They were almost at the same time as an E. In the eyes of this former Wei imperial prince, knowing his identity and still daring to make a move without restraint, there was an 80 to 90% chance that the other party had the same identity as him. It was just that he had a rough understanding of the various princes of Qiyuan, so he was unable to make the connection for a moment. However, when the city guards arrived and discovered that the other party was actually only He Zhenwei's son, and the one without any rank at all, they almost vomited blood. Don't ask him why he knew He Zhenwei. The former Wei was in the north of Qiyuan. In the east, there were the territories of the alliance of tribes that needed He Zhenwei to guard. After the former Wei stabilized its current territory, its main focus was on Qiyuan. Therefore, it had a lot of contacts with that alliance. Naturally, it paid special attention to things related to Qiyuan. He Zhenwei had 3 sons now. The eldest and the fourth had become generals with different ranks. Only the youngest son, who was the most dauntless, had no rank. The former prince of Wei wanted to kill someone, but he was beaten a little miserably by He Zhihai, who was too excited. Later, he even used his guard's knife. When he wanted the knife, He Zhihai snatched it. Qiyuan must give me an explanation for this matter. Otherwise, the Great Wei dynasty will not let this matter go. His face was full of ruthlessness. Although he was injured all over and was in so much pain that he could not stand up, he still did not change his nature and spoke ruthlessly. The leader of the city defense team also felt that he was unlucky. Why did he have to encounter this matter? However, he did not have the ability to deal with this matter. After thinking for a while, he decided to take young Master He back and let the higher-ups deal with it. He waved his hand. Take young Master He away. As expected, He Zhihai subconsciously wanted to make a move. However, an E had already arrived. Wait. These 2 words stopped He Zhihai. An E walked forward and did not look at the former Prince of Wei. He only looked at the city defense team. Master asked me to take him back. As for an E, the others didn't know his name, but he was the leader of the bodyguards at Jin Qinhuang's side. Not every one of them wanted to know him, but they still needed to know him in order to better protect their own and their subordinates' small lives. Therefore, when an E spoke, the other party agreed without a second word and was quite respectful. Thus, an E took He Zhihai and the other 3 guards of the He family away. The former Prince of Wei was unable to restrain his anger. He dragged his unsteady body and wanted to stop them, but he was blocked by the city defense team. You Qiyuan people really have big guts. You dare not put this prince in your eyes. This matter is not over. The leader of the city defense team lowered his eyes. Prince of Wei, if you have any dissatisfaction, you can speak frankly to His Majesty. The people who took him away are our Jin Qinhuang's people. Hearing this, the former Prince of Wei paused. In fact, Li Hongyuan could be considered as the person they focused on before coming here. Because he was a bit special according to their analysis. If they had a conflict with this Jin Qinhuang, they would be the ones to suffer in the end. However, wasn't it said that Li Hongyuan was not close to any of the court officials and had no contact? What was this now? He was openly protecting the son of a military general and his brother was also indifferent? You're Jin Qinhuang? Do you think this prince is easy to fool? Could it be that you think that De Wei doesn't know anything about your Qi Yuan's situation? The leader of the city defense team immediately understood what he meant and pulled up the corner of his mouth. There is another reason for this matter. Yi Gongzi has caught the eye of Jin Qinhuang. The whole capital knows about it. As for the specific situation, it is not something insignificant people like us know. If Prince of Wei has any questions, you can directly ask His Majesty. We are under orders to find Prince. Now we ask Prince to allow us to send you back to the post house. It was more important to quickly send the person back to complete the task. No matter how the people above fought, it was better for them to hide as far away as possible. Our prince has just entered the capital of Qi Yuan and was injured to this extent. You lowly people like you can send him back just like that? The guard was very unyielding. So, Prince of Wei doesn't want to return to the post house? People from other countries would be more respectful and courteous, but the former Wei, if your emperor didn't come in person, then Prince of Wei can wait. Scope. The leader waved his hand and left with his men. It was quite straightforward. The former Prince of Wei and the other guards who were also injured were dumbfounded for a moment. They were left behind just like that. What followed was a monstrous anger. Not to mention this prince, even his guards. Because their master was in power, their fowls and dogs rose to the sky. Like master, like subordinates. They were the best example. In the former Wei, they were used to being arrogant and were like crabs. Moreover, they were flattered and flattered by others. When had they ever suffered such a loss and suffered such humiliation? At this moment, not to mention the people involved, even the entire capital of Qi Yuan, and even the entire Qi Yuan, everyone wanted to get rid of them as soon as possible. It had to be said that after this incident, the bloodthirsty nature in the former Prince of Wei's heart could be said to have awakened a considerable part. However, it was useless to say these things now. They couldn't possibly continue to stay here in this state, right? Especially the Prince of Wei, the pain in his chest and abdomen did not lessen at all. It was very likely that his lungs were injured. If not treated in time, there might be sequelae. However, when they entered the capital, they sneaked out. They didn't know the layout of the capital of Qi Yuan. Even if they wanted to go to the courier station, they didn't know which direction it was. Moreover, the former Prince of Wei and the first prince were not in the same faction. If they went back in such a sorry state, they might be ridiculed. Not to mention other things, the former Prince of Wei was an extremely prideful person. The more he thought about it, the more furious he became. He was so angry that he coughed twice and spat out a mouthful of blood. The guards were naturally shocked. They looked like they couldn't take it anymore. Only one of them had to carry him. Their lives were in danger. How could they care about their pride? However, just as they were about to find someone to ask, they looked up. The originally lively market was now completely empty. All kinds of things were scattered everywhere. Some of the shops had even completely closed their doors. There was an inexplicable sense of desolation. An indescribable feeling grew in their hearts. It was as if they had been abandoned by the whole world. Time waits for no man. They didn't have the time to be sad. There was no one here, but there must be people in other places. They had to leave first. Break the doors of the shops. Their minds were a little clearer now. They didn't forget how today's incident happened. However, they didn't know that in fact, not all the people of the city defense team had left. The small team leader left a lot of people behind to quietly watch and not do anything. It wasn't that no one asked whether this was bad or not. The small team leader only said, "They are people of the former Wei." This completely dispelled their unnecessary thoughts. In these years, the former Wei and Qi Yuan were more peaceful. However, when the Qi Yuan was first established, they had fought many wars with the former Wei. Both sides had their wins and losses. No one knew how many people had died and how much money had been spent. The hatred between the two countries could be said to be well known. The people of the former Wei originally wanted to stay away. Those who didn't see the scene just now would always be able to meet people. However, they didn't expect that even when they left the market, people who saw them would quickly avoid them as if they were the plague. They couldn't understand this. They even thought that it was done deliberately. In fact, it was completely understandable. Think about it, they were just ordinary people. How could they not hide when they saw a few people who were armed, injured, and full of murderous aura? One must know that this kind of trouble could affect one's life and even implicate one's family. It would be strange if they didn't run away when they saw it. Seeing them like this, the people of the city guard team watched from afar. No matter who was right or wrong, they only had one thought: they deserved it. Originally, when they were in the territory of their mortal enemies, they should hide carefully. If they went out and were recognized, they might arouse the hatred of others. Then they might be put in gunny sack somewhere. However, they thought that they were infallible and didn't have the slightest self-awareness. Not to mention that they sneaked out and caused trouble for others. Now that they were in this situation, they deserved it. However, after all, it was not good to kill people. They couldn't really ignore it. Therefore, the small team leader had quickly reported this matter. Naturally, no one dared to hide such a thing. Therefore, the speed of the upload was very fast. It didn't take long for it to reach the top. Naturally, Luchingdi was still discussing with several ministers and his sons. After hearing it, they all fell silent. However, they couldn't help but feel a surge of joy in their hearts. They deserved it. Even a troublesome evil creature could do something good. However, after all, they were in high positions and couldn't be easily swayed by their emotions. Therefore, at least they didn't show it on their faces. Third son, go again and send Prince Wei back to the courier station. Also, understand the ins and outs of this matter clearly. If it is my Qi Yuan's fault, I will give an explanation to the former Wei. But if, the unfinished words couldn't be more obvious. If Prince Wei was wrong first, not only would he be beaten in vain, but he would also have to ask for an explanation from the former Wei. Yes, I will do as you say. However, father, young master He and his guards have been taken away by sixth brother. If we want to understand the situation, we must find young master He. Should we bring them out from sixth brother's place, or go and ask your sixth brother? If he wants to release them, bring them back. I will ask him personally. If he doesn't release them, just understand the situation clearly. Yes. Li Hongming answered, but he felt very uncomfortable in his heart. They were both his sons, but Luchingdi treated Li Hongyuan as his son and indulged him in everything. There was no need to ask Li Hongyuan's opinion on this matter. Wasn't it natural for him to want to release them? If his brothers tried to ask someone else, not to mention asking, they would directly send the imperial guards to the prince's mansion to ask for them. They would be done for if they dared to say one more word. This was a normal situation. It was really abnormal for Li Hongyuan to do this. The other princes' thoughts should be similar, but they could only keep their mouths shut. The court officials looked down and were happy to see insiders like Ruan Ruizhong and Luo Peishan. As for the others, they had long been used to it. Anyway, they couldn't control what Luchingdi wanted to do before he came to power. What did scheming have to do with them? In this way, Li Hongming quickly brought people to pick them up. Two groups of people led the way while he trotted on his horse. At the moment when he saw them, Li Hongming felt a little strange. It seemed a little too miserable, but to be honest, he was quite happy in his heart. When the people of the former Wei saw Li Hongming, they almost had the urge to cry. Li Hongming sat on the horse and didn't get down. This prince is ordered by my father to send Prince Wei to the courier station. Out of etiquette and also out of morality, they should have given the horse to Prince Wei. However, that would mean that Li Hongming would have to walk on his own. He did not think that the other party had such a big face. Furthermore, he was very clear that some people just like to take advantage of others. If you were polite now, the other party might think that you were in the wrong and might even become arrogant. Since it was Qiyuan who was suppressing the former Wei now, then it was necessary to suppress to the end. These people gritted their teeth, but they had no choice. The previous people dared to do that, not to mention this prince, who asked them to be weak. They could only remain silent. Li Hongming said that he would send them back, so he would send them back. He didn't have the slightest intention to help. He had no choice. He also had to avoid arousing suspicion. Something happened to Prince Wei, what would he do if it was blamed on him? Therefore, it was better for the guards to work harder. Therefore, even if there were people coming to pick them up, other than not taking detours, there was no change. Could even be said that it was worse. Being surrounded by a group of people dressed in bright and beautiful clothes, They might even look down on them and laugh at them. Prince Wei's chest rose and fell more and more obviously. Then he gasped in pain. As a result, he could only suppress his anger and close his eyes. Out of sight, out of mind. However, today's matter taught Prince Wei a good lesson. His desire for power became more and more obvious, so that in the future, when they approached the courier station, the former Wei crown prince had already received the news and came to the door to welcome them. When he saw the scene, he felt very strange. Most of them were happy like the people of Qiyuan. His brother was ranked 5th. Although he wasn't the legitimate son of the empress, he was really loyal to the crown prince. His birth mother was the empress's stepsister and was one of the 4 concubines. In the palace they should be enemies. However, concubine Xian's birth mother was from a different tribe, and his brother had inherited different pupils. When the former Wei expanded to the north, in order to have a sufficient population, they gathered many people from different tribes. After hundreds of years of integration and education, the absolute rulers were still the people who continued from the Wei dynasty. Therefore, even if the prince had the blood of a different tribe and had obvious characteristics, no matter how favored he would definitely have no fate with the throne. In this respect, he was inferior to the child of a palace maid who was purely from the Wei dynasty. Of course, because too much time had passed and the bloodline had weakened after several generations or even dozens of generations of marriages, it was usually difficult to trace. However, this prince's characteristics were too obvious. If one traced back, it would be easy to find out that he was from a different tribe. It was a tragedy. However, the 5th Prince of Wei and his mother were very clear about their status. They stuck close to the empress and the crown prince. People like them were simply natural allies to the empress and the crown prince. When people like them worked together, they had an absolute advantage in both the imperial court and the imperial harem. Therefore, it seemed that the former Wei had fewer internal disputes than Qiyuan. As for the 5th Prince of Wei, even if he had different pupils, he should have been the one who was ostracized and despised among the princes. However, he relied on his powerful backing and ran amok. Even the eldest prince had to avoid him. How unbridled and insolent was he in his own country. Now he was beaten to such a state. How could he not be happy? However, they were in Qiyuan after all. No matter what happened internally, their position would always be the same. Therefore, the crown prince of the former Wei frowned and quickly stepped forward. 5th brother, what happened? How did you get hurt so badly? Although they did not get along well in the country, the crown prince had his own ambitions. His mother was Consort and he was the eldest son. His family was also very powerful. Therefore, how could he give up the throne so easily? Naturally, there were many open and covert struggles. As the 5th prince's guards, they were naturally very clear about this. However, they also understood the current situation. It should be known that the crown prince was in charge of this diplomatic mission to Qiyuan. Therefore, the crown prince had to come forward to deal with the 5th prince's injuries. Therefore, they were filled with righteous indignation. They inverted right and wrong, added fuel to the fire, and described all kinds of evil deeds of the people in Qiyuan. Li Hongming listened from the side and did not interfere. He just listened quietly and did not even get angry. Usually, this tactic would only work when both sides were evenly matched. However, this was Qiyuan's home ground. Qiyuan had the absolute advantage. You can't just say whatever you want. Not to mention that it was not the truth. Even if it was the truth, Qiyuan had the right to distort the truth. Therefore, if you want to say something, just say it. If you want to say something, just say it. You're just wasting your breath. If you're indignant, you're just asking for trouble. Why bother? The crown prince of the former Wei was obviously very angry after hearing this. However, he tried his best to suppress his anger. Shouldn't Prince Rui give us an explanation? Li Hongming chuckled. We will naturally find out what happened. Our Qiyuan is a country of etiquette. We abide by the rules and are reasonable. We won't easily accuse others, so naturally we won't be falsely accused. Father has already said that he will personally investigate the matter. However, in my opinion, isn't your younger brother's injury the most important thing right now? You should know that even if it's a minor injury, if not treated in time, it could become a serious injury or even life-threatening. The crown prince of the former Wei's expression changed slightly. Although he was the leader, most of the people accompanying him were not his people. This kind of instigation would make people think that he was deliberately stalling for time and ignoring his 5th brother's injury. Then this trip would definitely not go smoothly. When he returned to the country, those people would have an excuse to attack him. Prince Rui, don't disappoint us. Hurry up and send my fifth brother in. Let the imperial physician examine him. He ignored some people's doubtful gazes. Li Hongming followed him in. On the surface, the crown prince of the former Wei's internal disputes were not as fierce as Qi Yuan. However, as long as they were not from the same faction, this kind of well-known instigation was also very effective. Moreover, it could be said that the results were immediate. The crown prince of the former Wei had brought 3 imperial physicians with him. However, because of the long journey, the oldest one had fallen ill. Now, there were only 2 imperial physicians in front of the crown prince of the former Wei. Both of them were not very good at treating this kind of injury, so they did not dare to be careless. Li Hongming stood to the side. Do you want me to call 2 of them who are good at treating injuries to take a look? As the saying goes, brainstorming is beneficial. It should be more helpful for your younger brother. The crown prince of the former Wei subconsciously wanted to refuse, but another important official hurriedly said, "Thank you, Your Highness." A strange look flashed across the crown prince of the former Wei's eyes, but he did not say anything. Who wants their imperial physicians? From the crown prince of the former Wei seemed to have regained his confidence. Your Highness, you must not let your emotions affect your decisions. Your injury is more important. The official took 2 steps forward and pressed the crown prince's hand in a place where no one else could see. The crown prince of the former Wei remembered his mother and his brother the crown prince's instructions before he left. He must not act as he pleased and must listen to the right assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel. He thought about how he had suffered such a big loss in such a short time after leaving without permission. In the end, he restrained himself and did not speak again. Since that is the case, I will immediately send someone to call for them, Li Hongming said as he turned around and gave a few orders. Thank you, Your Highness. The crown prince of the former Wei clasped his hands in salute. You are welcome. No matter what, your younger brother was injured in the capital of Qi Yuan. However, we still need to investigate at this time. The person who fought with your younger brother was taken away by my 6th brother. I still need to find my 6th brother to understand the situation, so I will take my leave first. If there are no accidents, I will be the first to give you an explanation at the welcoming banquet prepared for everyone in the palace tomorrow. That would be great. I will take my leave. Li Hongming took his leave. The crown prince of the former Wei's expression did not change. He asked a few questions out of concern, but it did not matter if he did not receive a response. He said to himself. However, 5th brother needs to be more careful in the future. After all, this is not the capital of the Wei dynasty. If something happens, that's enough. Eldest imperial brother, you should put away that act. There are no outsiders and everyone knows each other. There is no need to pretend. The crown prince of the former Wei showed a hint of helplessness. I know that 5th brother does not like me. I will not say much. You should recover well. He did not say anything like, I will seek justice for 5th brother. The crown prince of the former Wei was indignant. He drove the imperial physicians out and ordered them to prepare medicine. The others did the same. Only the right assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel remained. Lord Hu, why did you accept Qi Yuan's imperial physicians? Lord Hu looked to be in his 40s. There was not a single strand of white on his beard. He sighed softly. Your Highness, this is not the Wei dynasty. The crown prince is more powerful. Moreover, because of His Highness the crown prince hates you as well. We do not know the situation of the imperial physicians that we brought. Even if they appear to be our men, they may have been bribed behind our backs. If they do something at this time, Your Highness. How dare he? The crown prince of the former Wei dynasty's face was ferocious. His eyes were full of murderous intent. Your Highness, the person who injured you is from Qi Yuan. The crown prince can use someone else to do the dirty work. Moreover, we are very clear about the relationship between the Wei dynasty and Qi Yuan. If the crown prince really wants to do this and something happens to you, he can take the opportunity to make things difficult for Qi Yuan. When news of this spread back to the country, even if His Majesty suspects something, he will not pursue the matter. He will only hold on to Qi Yuan and not let it go. Your Highness, think about it. Do you think His Majesty will pursue the fault of one of his sons for the sake of another? Or will he take advantage of his son's death to bite off a piece of flesh from Qi Yuan? The crown prince of the former Wei dynasty did not say a word. He knew very well what choice his father would make. His Majesty's ambition is Qi Yuan. He is more ambitious than any previous emperor. If the crown prince can make a contribution in this regard, he will not be at fault. Instead, he will be rewarded. The crown prince is very clear about this. Therefore, the crown prince will also interfere. He will appear even more sorrowful and make a bigger crusade against Qi Yuan. He will not pursue the truth. The crown prince of the former Wei dynasty huffed and puffed. Brother crown prince, your highness, don't say that the crown prince will not do that. The crown prince made a contribution and won his majesty's favor. If he goes against the crown prince, his majesty will definitely hate him. Do you think that the crown prince will do such a thing? Do you think that your life and death is more important to the crown prince than his majesty's favor? Of course not. The crown prince of the former Wei dynasty knew very well that as long as it did not conflict with his interests, he would be his best younger brother. He would indulge him in every way possible and give him whatever he wanted. If he caused trouble, he would not hesitate to clean up the mess. However, if his interests were at stake, especially if it was related to the throne, the crown prince might personally kill him. If his highness schemed against you and lost his life, his highness the crown prince might be happy to see it happen and have an excuse to make things difficult for Qi Yuan. After this matter is over, he might even make things difficult for his highness the crown prince. Your imperial mother, your biological grandmother, and the power behind your grandmother would all be grateful to his highness the crown prince and become more loyal to him. So my life and death will be used to the fullest. Then he looked sharply at the right assistant minister of the Ministry of Personal Lord Hu. You are the crown prince's man. Your highness, to be more precise, I am your mother's man. The one who I really want to be loyal to is you. The crown prince of the former Wei dynasty was shocked. He could even hear the terrifying and soul-shaking thing in Lord Hu's words. Help! Lord Hu acted as if he did not hear anything. Your highness, you should know that the imperial family of the Wei dynasty has always been prejudiced against the alien race. You don't have alien blood, the crown prince of the former Wei dynasty said coldly. Your highness, you are wrong. Not only do I have alien blood, but my father is also a pure alien. The crown prince of the former Wei dynasty could not believe it. How is that possible? It's a long story. My father is not my father. Instead, he is the enemy who killed my father. If not for the fact that I look like my mother most of the time and have no alien characteristics, I might have died along with my mother. There is nothing wrong with Great Wei's northern expedition to expand its territory. For the sake of the country's stability, they incorporated the alien race. However, deep in their bones, they reject the alien race and believe themselves to be superior. Under the same conditions, the original citizens of the Wei dynasty can be put in more important positions. On the other hand, with alien blood, even if they are more capable, they will have to work 10 times harder. Even so, they might not be able to compare to the original citizens of the Wei dynasty. Your highness, do you know? This subject is filled with hatred and unwillingness. Truly unwillingness. If your highness is the one who ascends the throne, then this situation will completely change. We are not changing a dynasty, but we will make the distinction between the original citizens of the Wei dynasty and the alien race. Everyone will become citizens of the Wei dynasty. More capable people will be able to serve the Wei dynasty better, making the Wei dynasty stronger and even achieving unification. As for the former 5th Prince of Wei, it was very obvious that he was deeply attracted by the blueprint he had drawn. The unwillingness and injustice that had been suppressed in the bottom of his heart had all emerged. That's right, why couldn't he be the emperor? Why must he be suppressed by the crown prince and ordered around by him? So what if I have alien blood? Am I not a citizen of the Wei dynasty? If I become the emperor, I will change the unfavorable situation of the Wei dynasty. Then I will definitely lead the Wei dynasty to become unprecedentedly powerful. I will also become an emperor for all eternity. At this moment, the bloodthirsty and cruel 5th prince of the former Wei dynasty's ambition was completely revived. Lord Hu will always help this prince, right? Of course. Moreover, those officials with foreign bloodlines will all stand on the side of His Highness the 5th prince. Deliberately revealing his background as evidence was naturally to gain the trust of the other party. The 5th prince of the former Wei dynasty's heart became more and more heated. Lord Hu accepted the imperial physicians of the Qi Yuan because they can not only restrain the imperial physicians we brought, they will also do their best to treat this prince. After all, they absolutely do not want anything to happen to this prince. Killing someone and killing someone are two completely different things. Your Highness is wise. It's just that your Highness's actions today are somewhat inappropriate. In the past, because you had no choice, people mistakenly thought that your Highness was somewhat unrestrained and unreliable. However, we all know that your Highness is only doing this to better protect yourself. Your Highness is actually clear-sighted and has great talent and bold vision. In the future, your Highness does not have to be like this all the time. It will be more advantageous for your Highness to appear more stable and reliable appropriately. The fifth prince of the former Wei dynasty was somewhat guilty. That was really his true temperament. He did not do it on purpose. However, as the emperor, he definitely could not be like this. Therefore, he admitted that there was a misunderstanding. Since you know, this prince will naturally not disappoint you. Lord Hu revealed an expression of pride. This subject will tell them that following your Highness is absolutely the right thing to do. The fifth prince of the former Wei dynasty revealed a matter-of-fact expression. Right now, does Imperial Mother know? Of course she knows. Imperial concubine Xian has made many plans for your Highness. Chapter 393. The people in the room lowered their voices and continued to talk about something. The imperial physician brought by the former Wei had prescribed medicine, but their fifth prince refused to take it, even if it was for external use. Of course, this matter was quickly reported to the first prince. Because they had just settled down, the eldest prince rested for a while and leisurely watched the maidservant brew tea. When the maidservant handed him the teacup, he did not take it. Instead, he held her hand and leaned forward with a faint smile. It seemed like he was going to drink the tea from her hand. The maidservant blushed and her hands trembled. She did not dare to look him in the eyes. However, the eldest prince did not say anything and only looked at the maidservant quietly. Therefore, every time the maidservant stole a glance at him, she would be able to meet his eyes immediately. It made people think that he was always looking at her and that she was the only one in his eyes. He was a prince, a noble, and she was just a lowly servant. How could she withstand such an attack? Without much hesitation, she wanted to lean into his arms. At this moment, someone came in to report that the former Wei kingdom's eldest prince naturally took the teacup and sat back down. Come in. The maidservant was still in the same position and did not know what to do. The eldest prince smiled at her and said, "You can leave first." Only then did the maidservant come back to her senses. She replied weakly with reluctance, but when she didn't get a response, she turned around and left. She snorted coldly at the person who came in. Obviously, in her opinion, if this person hadn't suddenly appeared, she would have already been. The person who came in was puzzled and touched his nose. He did not know how he had provoked this beautiful maidservant, but he did not ask. "Greetings, Your Highness. What's the matter?" The former Wei kingdom's eldest prince took a sip of tea and looked at the teacup in his hand. It looked very ordinary, but it attracted all his attention. The person explained the matter concisely. The eldest prince finally gave the person who came in a look. "He is guarding against me. He thinks that I will kill him." The person lowered his head and did not say anything. If he wanted to live long, then he had to pretend that he did not hear some words even if he heard them. Since he is willing to continue to suffer, then let him be. When the imperial physician from Qiyuan comes, just bring him over. There's no need to report back. "Yes, Your Highness." When only the former Grand Prince of Wei was left in the room, the smile on his face didn't change. He played with the cup in his hand and muttered, "The Crown Prince tried to frame me, but he is more likely to do it than me. He really is a brainless idiot." However, once this idiot made a ruckus regardless of anything, the destruction was immeasurable. "I just arrived and didn't even have time to catch my breath before something happened. I don't know what's going to happen next." But the attendant guarding outside came in. "Your Highness, what are your orders?" Yining probably doesn't know about Fifth Royal Brother's injury. She has always been close to Fifth Royal Brother. Go and inform her so she can visit Fifth Royal Brother when she has time. "Yes, Your Highness." The former Wei Kingdom's Princess Yining not only brought the most things, but also the most people. In the post house, the space that was originally allocated to the former Wei Kingdom was not enough. It still needed to be adjusted. It should be known that if the space next to the post house was moved, then there might not be enough space next to it. After all, the post house was the same as the imperial palace. There were advantages and disadvantages in terms of geographical location. The people from which countries were allocated to which places had been decided long ago and could not be easily changed. This change might cause trouble. Now that the former Wei kingdom occupied the space next to the post house, there might not be enough space next to it. If the post house was moved one by one, then it would only be the former Wei kingdom. At most, the Qi Yuan's people would have to work harder. But what if several countries moved in together? Once they moved in, who would allow them to move again? Although it seemed like a small matter, they could definitely accuse them of not taking them seriously. Then it would escalate to a diplomatic issue between countries. Therefore, the space next to the post house could not be moved easily. It was also very troublesome to move it. The best way was to move Princess Yining to another place. After all, in the past, the former Wei kingdom's envoys who went to Qiyuan lived in this place. There had never been a situation where there was not enough space. Moreover, it was more than enough. Logically speaking, even if there was a princess following them, there would be no problem with more things and more people. However, Princess Yining was a little too much. Since it was a special situation, it was understandable to move Princess Yining. The problem now was that Princess Yining did not want to move. Her excuse was quite dignified. She was like a girl. Since she went out with her brothers, she naturally had to live in the same courtyard as them. There was no reason for her to live elsewhere. Moreover, the people who served Princess Yining said that their princess was a little timid. She was unfamiliar with the place and people and would be afraid to leave her brothers. Of course, they didn't say it so bluntly, but this was what they meant. The official from the Ministry of Rights who stayed behind tried to persuade her, but it was useless. He just wanted to scratch his head. Moreover, because he was a man, he couldn't see Princess Yining in person. His subordinates insisted that it was their princess's idea. Not only that, they also repeatedly urged the officials from Qiyuan to make the arrangements quickly. Their prince and princess were generous and didn't care about the fact that Qiyuan didn't arrange the accommodation in advance. However, they couldn't deal with it for a long time. Their master was not a good-tempered person. The official from Qiyuan almost cursed directly. It was obvious that they were looking for trouble. However, he couldn't deal with it. He couldn't argue with a group of women, so he had to go back. Don't look at the matter of Li Hongming seeing Princess Yining, and seemingly feeling the immortal cheek on her body. In fact, she was also very unhappy in her heart. The originally planned itinerary was rushed at the back so quickly, her whole body was about to fall apart. Unusually uncomfortable, it would be strange if she was happy. However, she had no choice at all. Eldest brother seemed to have a good temper, but in fact he was very hypocritical. He was a smiling fox. When fifth brother was patient, he could coax her. When he was impatient, he was quite scary. Even if the Empress's mother and the Crown Prince's brother were here, she didn't dare to be too rash. It was not easy to get here, but the accommodation was not arranged well. How could he not be angry? Not to mention discussing, he didn't directly make a scene, which was already to protect the image of the former Wei. The former Wei Crown Prince's people sent people here at this time. Princess Yining didn't show it on her face, but in her heart she scolded, "Serves you right." Then she said a few words, saying that she was still busy here, and that she would go and see fifth brother after she settled down. Speaking of which, Princess Yining had a lot of opinions towards her two elder brothers. In fact, she also knew that the post house that Qiyuan specially gave to Great Wei was already big enough. She had once gone in to take a look at her own country's post house, and it couldn't compare to this place. For all the people from Great Wei who came, if it was a little more crowded, it could be arranged. Thinking about how noble she was, she could endure a little more crowded. However, that good elder brother of hers, according to the normal accommodation arrangement, the entire place was basically divided into 5 equal parts. The 3 of them siblings each occupied 1 place, and the remaining officials occupied 2 places. Was this a problem? It was not a problem. According to the master's identity, it was reasonable to divide the area. The problem was that in the entire envoy group she occupied a little more than half of the people. Needless to say, there were more than half of the people and 2/3 of the things, but the result was only 1/5 of the territory. How should she arrange it? How should she arrange it? It was not her who wanted to come to Qiyuan, and it was not her who wanted to bring so many people and so many things. Now it was thrown to her to deal with. The trouble was still in Qiyuan, so, in essence, it was the former Great Wei who was looking for trouble. When Lu Qingdi learned of this matter, he naturally did not have a good expression. Luo Peishan consciously stood up. He went to deal with it. Originally, it was the Ministry of Rights' job to receive the envoys from various countries. During this time, Li Hongming went to Jin Qinhuangfu. Because they had reconciled, Li Hongyuan naturally did not block him at the door. But even so, it did not mean that Li Hongyuan would like to see him. Knowing the purpose of his visit to Jinqin Wangfu, he directly asked someone to take him to see He Zhihai. Li Hongming's expression changed slightly, but he did not say anything. Li Hongyuan did not want to see him, but he did not want to see Li Hongyuan. But in the end, these were two different things. The other party did not want to see him, which meant that Li Hongyuan did not want to give him face. But this kind of thing, there was really no way to haggle over it. When he saw He Zhihai was surrounded and beaten by the people of Jinqin Wangfu. The ordinary bodyguards of Jinqin Wangfu were well trained, and Li Hongyuan ordered He Zhihai not to fight back. If he hurt the bodyguards of Jinqin Wangfu, he was not to visit again in the future. This was a real threat to He Zhihai, so at this time he was miserably surrounded and beaten. Li Hongming was surprised. What is going on? An Yi stood at the side, expressionless. Replying to Wang Ye, our master said, since He Gongzi fought with someone, the other party can still stand properly. It can be seen that He Gongzi's fists are like cotton and must be well trained. If you want to beat someone, you have to be beaten first. Li Hongming couldn't help but twitch his mouth. To be able to speak crooked logic and absolutely carry it out, other than Li Hongyuan, there was no one else. Thinking of the miserable appearance of the former Wei's fifth prince, how could he stand properly? Did it have to be unable to get up, unable to move, to be called not good? But he couldn't care less. Since He Gongzi is training, Ben Wang will not disturb him. If he could take the person away, he probably wouldn't have to come in. Several servants of the He family were also present at the time. They should be clear about the previous matter. Ben Wang will go ask them. Those people's injuries are not light and are currently healing. So I am afraid that Wang Ye will have to move. No matter, lead the way. Since he had said so, could Li Hongming still put on airs and say no? Even if he was unhappy in his heart. Actually, this matter was quite simple. The cause, the result, everything added up in a few sentences. There was no conspiracy, no ups and downs. Li Hongming had also heard of the former Wei's version of events. Comparing the two, Li Hongming didn't know what kind of expression he should show. In his opinion, He Gongzi was just looking for trouble. He was just a commoner, so what if he really humiliated him? However, since it had escalated to diplomatic relations between the two countries, then there was no doubt that he had to stand firm on his position of Qiyuan people cannot be humiliated so easily. Thus, his expression was unusually serious. Ben Wang will report this matter to Imperial Father and let the former Wei's people know that Qiyuan people cannot be humiliated. Alright, in short, from a commoner's face, it had risen to the entire Qiyuan's face. Therefore people like Li Hongming were really enough. No matter how fake these words were, as a person of Qiyuan he also had to stand firm on his position. As long as Qiyuan was there he would not waver. Li Hongming left Jinqin Wangfu. In his heart his dislike of He Zhihai rose to a new height. Stirring up trouble and looking for trouble, he was already busy enough. Li Hongming entered the palace. Luo Peishan had already left the palace. Luo Peishan also didn't bother with Princess Yi Ning. He was a man and an official. The other party was a woman and a princess of another country. This was etiquette. No matter what, he couldn't make any mistakes. He naturally went to look for the person in charge of the former Wei. When the former Wei's eldest prince found out that a minister of Qiyuan had come, he naturally couldn't neglect him and quickly invited him in. Luo Peishan was full of elegance and even had a bit of a mortal aura. He treated the former Wei's eldest prince with the respect that should be shown to a prince of another country. He also seemed to show some concern for the younger generation. Under normal circumstances, for a person in a higher position, if a person of lower status than them assumed the attitude of an elder, no matter if the other party was taking advantage of their seniority or purely showing concern, it would make people feel disgusted. They only had one thought: what kind of thing are you that you dare to assume such an attitude? However, Luo Peishan didn't make people feel disgusted at all. Instead, it was like a spring breeze. When the former Wei's eldest prince realized this, he had already chatted happily with Luo Peishan for a while. Naturally, he became vigilant. In fact, it didn't have any effect. Luo Peishan didn't pry into anything and just chatted for a while. After the foreshadowing was done, it was time to get to the main topic. Great Wei and Qiyuan have the same inheritance. Great Wei has always considered itself as the most orthodox inheritance. In this regard, Qiyuan is somewhat lacking. Hearing Luo Peishan's words, the former Wei's eldest prince was naturally a bit proud. He even said a few words humbly. For example, a lot of things were taken away at that time, especially various books. Qi Yuan also appeared after that. It was understandable that some things were broken. Although that was what he said, it was a joke if he really cared about it. Back then, the Wei's emperor and his officials left the capital in a hurry. The things they took away were definitely limited. It was understandable that they took more practical things like gold and silver. Moreover, even if they took away a lot of books, a country was so big. The books in the capital were nothing. It would be a joke if some inheritance was broken because of this. Luo Peishan smiled and didn't get angry. He even praised a few people. Then, naturally, the topic turned to the precautions between men and women. After hundreds of years of change, Qi Yuan's requirements for women were not as strict as before. It couldn't be compared to Great Wei. Even Princess Yi Ning's accompanying this trip was probably an exception. Her clothes were also influenced by her family. All these things must be because Princess Yi Ning was extremely favored. Even the Emperor and Empress of Great Wei couldn't bear to be harsh on her. Everyone knew and understood the pitiful hearts of parents in the world. As long as there were no problems in major matters, they would act. It was just a small matter to pamper one person. The former Wei's eldest prince's expression became a bit stiff. So, everything was waiting for him here. He should have known earlier. How could he be so complacent? On the surface, he said that Great Wei was good in every way. In fact, he was just mocking them for saying one thing and doing another. They casually took their princess out of the country. Who knew what the hell was going on about the precautions between men and women? The emperor and empress could spoil a princess without any principles. Could they also do stupid things without any principles? The former Wei's eldest prince thought quickly and was about to open his mouth to refute. But Luo Peishan was not done yet. The former Wei was a country of etiquette and paid the most attention to ancient etiquette. This time they did not inform Qi Yuan that Princess Yi Ning would accompany them. They did not tell them how many people they would bring. It was probably because they were too busy and forgot. However, it did not matter. Occasionally some things were not taken care of. Everyone understood. It was also their fault for not preparing a place for Princess Yi Ning. So to express our apology, Qi Yuan is willing to arrange another place for Princess Yi Ning. It is also within the range of the courier station, but it is on the side close to the imperial palace. Perhaps it is a little remote for the whole courier station, but the scenery inside is more pleasant. Moreover, it is close to the imperial palace, so there is no need to worry about her safety. It is also more convenient for her to go in and out. It is not a big deal now, but in a few days the envoys from other countries will arrive. Living next to the Great Wei, there has never been a female family member. Great Wei pays attention to this, so it should be better for the princess to avoid them. After all, the princess cannot not go out. As for the other envoys, they are all here for the emperor's birthday and for the sake of the friendship between the two countries. Luo Peishan spoke at a leisurely pace, openly praising and belittling the prince. However, he had already taken responsibility for the prince's mistake, and was even more concerned about the princess's reputation. If the prince did not follow his lead, it would mean that he doubted the prince's dogma and was slapping himself in the face. The former Wei crown prince had nothing to say. So he had wanted to cause trouble at the beginning, but in the end he had dug himself into a pit? Your Excellency is right. It was indeed this prince's fault for not thinking things through. Now that I have to trouble your Excellency, please forgive me. At this point it was better to simply admit it. After all, if the prince insisted on not agreeing, it would not be the Qi Yuan who would lose face but the Great Wei. As the person in charge, he would be the first to be punished when he returned. Everyone makes mistakes. Moreover, the first prince has little experience, so it is understandable for him to have made some small mistakes. The former Wei crown prince could not maintain the expression on his face. The entire Great Wei had been openly praised and belittled, and now he was being insulted as well? But did Luo Peishan say anything? No, he was just following the former Wei crown prince's words. Therefore, the former Wei crown prince could only swallow his anger and swallow his anger. This old man is a foreign subject, so it is inconvenient for me to meet Princess Yi Ning. Please convey our apologies to the first prince. Your Excellency is too polite. This was originally our fault. Luo Peishan was not modest at all. He nodded as if acknowledging the former Wei crown prince's words. The former Wei crown prince almost choked on his breath. He had to admit that he had seen it for himself. Although there were such people in the Great Way, it seemed that his country's people were a little weaker. The matter was done. Luo Peishan was busy today and had other important matters to attend to, so he took his leave first. The former Wei Crown Prince could only see him out personally. Outside, Luo Peishan instructed the officials from the Ministry of Rites to do their best and not be negligent. The official from the Ministry of Rites, who had been troubled by Princess Yining before, now had a feeling of reverence for Luo Peishan. It was like the endless flow of water. Princess Yining had also made up her mind to waste time, but she did not want to wait for her eldest imperial brother. The former Wei Crown Prince only explained the matter in a soft voice. Princess Yining wanted to fly into a rage on the spot, but it was clear that the former Wei Crown Prince understood his sister quite well, so he was not angry and his smile did not change. Yining, did you forget the purpose of coming to Qiyuan this time? Princess Yining's face was ashen, and her beautiful eyes seemed to be about to spit fire. The former Wei Crown Prince suddenly reached out and touched her eyes. Princess Yining subconsciously dodged, and slapped the back of the Crown Prince's hand. The Crown Prince did not care and even twirled his fingers as if he was reminiscing. Yining's eyes are really beautiful. Even if you are angry, you are so moving. No wonder His Highness the Crown Prince likes you so much. What nonsense are you talking about? Princess Yining was unable to restrain her anger, and there was some panic in her expression. Nonsense? Look at what Yining is saying. Did I say something wrong? Not only His Highness the Crown Prince likes you, but many people like you, including Father Emperor, other brothers and me. So many people like you. Shouldn't Yining be happy? Princess Yining's expression was very ugly, but she did not say a word. The former Wei Crown Prince smiled again. Yining, let the subordinates prepare. You have a lot of things, and if you delay any longer, who knows when you will be busy. It doesn't matter when you are in Great Way, but it is better to be careful outside. After all, we represent Great Way. If people think that we Great Way people are undisciplined, it will not be good. In fact, it doesn't matter if I lose face, but if Great Way loses face, you will be the sinner. Who did this to you? Princess Yining could not bear it and screamed. Who did this to you? Who did this to you? Didn't you want to bring the things and people? Even if you didn't, did you refuse? Without you we can relax easily. You should be very clear how much trouble you have caused along the way. That's not right. How would Yining know? You're the apple of Imperial Father, Empress and Crown Prince's eyes. You can have whatever you want. It's just a matter of saying a word. How can it be troublesome to just say a word? You've never done anything. Naturally, you can't experience the troubles of others. Since you brought it out, you naturally have to be responsible. You want others to give it to you? The Crown Prince leaned closer and lowered his voice. Who do you think you are? What right do you have? Yining, I am not the Crown Prince. However, it is not without effect for you to cause a ruckus. Yining, if you don't want to suffer, be obedient. Otherwise, you may not even see Father Emperor and the Empress for the last time. Princess Yining was so angry that her whole body was trembling. The hatred in her eyes was almost tangible. The former Wei Crown Prince sighed softly. The more I look at you, the prettier you are. Yining, don't look at me like that. Otherwise I might do something. Princess Yining's expression instantly became fearful. She subconsciously crossed her arms in front of her chest, her face full of vigilance. The former Wei Crown Prince smiled again. I just want to dig it out and keep it. Yining, aren't you thinking too much? After all, I just like Yining's eyes. After saying that, he seemed to have lost his interest and patience. He turned around and left without hesitation. Princess Yining was startled. Then she covered her face with both hands and squatted on the floor in the room, breaking down and crying. The servant girls outside heard it, but none of them had the intention to go in and take a look. They lowered their heads and pretended not to hear anything. As for the others, after receiving the Crown Prince's orders, they did not dare to delay. Fortunately, many things were not opened yet, so it was not troublesome to put them away. The things were moved out one by one. Qiyuan also sent many people to help, so the moving was very fast. In the end, Princess Yining was escorted out by the servant girls. She covered her face with a veil. Her eyes were not red or swollen. They were still lively as if they could speak. There was nothing strange about them. The Crown Prince followed beside her. The atmosphere between the brother and sister was harmonious. It seemed that the relationship between the brother and sister was very good. However, Princess Yining was not ostentatious on the way. She also rode in a very normal carriage. In fact, the place arranged for Princess Yining was just as Luo Peishan said. The location was only a little remote compared to the rest of the post house. In fact, the location was very good. The scenery inside was also very beautiful. Could be said that it was much better than the previous place. Princess Yining was not happy at first. Now that she saw the place, her mood improved a lot. She even sneered in her heart. This place might really be safer. While she was still tidying up here, there was news that another country had arrived. It was much smaller than the former Wei in Qiyuan. The country was called Chong. Even if there was a prince, they only arranged for people below to welcome him. Not to mention the prince, even the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights did not get to see him. Even so, they did not dare to have any objections. It was just that there was a difference in language. People from the Honglu Temple had to follow them all the way. Speaking of which, in this country the people from the Honglu Temple were only sent to the former Wei for decoration. The others, no matter how big or small, needed people from the Honglu Temple. People from the Chong Kingdom heard that the former Wei had arrived. It had to be said that they were quite surprised. Under normal circumstances, it was normal for a big country like this to arrive a few days before the emperor's birthday. If a big country was going to a small country, it was not impossible for them to arrive on the same day. For a country like the former Wei, it was very strange for them to be the first to arrive. In all likelihood, there were things that they did not know. However, these small countries could not interfere with the affairs of these big countries. They had to be obedient and do what they should do. Of course, they had to inquire about things that they should inquire about. They had to make it clear and understand so as to avoid conflict. The people they inquired about were the people from the Qiyuan's Honglu Temple. They would definitely tell them what they could know. After all, if they really did conflict, the people from the Qiyuan's Honglu Temple would also take responsibility. And if these small countries did not want to know, the people from the Qiyuan's Honglu Temple would certainly not tell them. This was the best and safest way. The next day, Lu Qingdi held a banquet in the palace to welcome the former Wei's envoy. He also made friends with the people from the Chong Kingdom. No matter how small a country was, it was still a country. He still had to give them some face. Although under normal circumstances, if the Chong Kingdom was the first to arrive, at most they would send a prince to hold a banquet outside the palace. This prince would most likely not be a prince with real power like Prince Kong, Prince Rui or Prince Gong. But because there was a princess in the Chong Kingdom, this banquet would definitely be different. Not to mention other things, at least there must be women present. Therefore, Lu Qingdi simply waved his hand and added a few outsiders to the family banquet. Since it was a family banquet, then the concubines who held real power and the princes who had already been conferred the title of prince could not be left out. As for the officials, they had to be excluded. This arrangement seemed to be giving the former Wei Tian a lot of face. However, since it was a family banquet, it meant that they treated you as one of their family. How could one treat a family member the same as a guest? Obviously, it was absolutely impossible. The former was much more casual than the latter. Casual also meant that some things could not be fussed over. The three members of the former Wei's imperial family brought along their entourage of officials. The rest of the people were naturally very few. They first paid their respects to Lu Qingdi according to the rules. As for the Chong Kingdom, only 10 people entered the palace, and only 3 of them were qualified to stand in front of Lu Qingdi. Compared to the people from the former Wei, they were really a bit pitiful. However, the 3 people from the Chong Kingdom didn't have the slightest strange emotion. Although they were just hitching a ride at this banquet for them, it could be considered as flattering. After the formal greeting, they naturally prepared a string instrument as well. Lu Qingdi personally brought them over. These envoys saw that many people were already present and knew their identity from their clothes. Moreover, there were basically women beside them. The officials wouldn't bring women to the reception banquet of other countries' envoys. They were puzzled and looked at each other in confusion. In the end, they didn't ask and didn't mention it. However, seeing that there were women present, Princess Yining's heart calmed down a lot. She was originally worried about what would happen in the end. If it was better, they might arrange for someone else to receive her or the concubines or other princesses. She didn't want to face a bad situation. It was probably that she, a woman, was mixed in with a group of men. At that time, she would be as conspicuous as possible. Even if she was used to being surrounded by stars, it was only in a group of people who were lower in status than her or in the palace. The emperor of a country that was on the same level as the former Wei, A group of princes, Wangye, and officials who held great power would no longer flatter and fawn on her. Instead, they would size her up and even have deep malice. Just thinking about that atmosphere made her afraid. Fortunately, she suddenly felt a trace of gratitude to Lu Qingdi who made such an arrangement. After greeting each other, they all sat down. The others basically sat in pairs. Only Princess Yi Ning sat alone. To be honest, the former Wei had praised Princess Yi Ning very highly in the beginning. Now, Qi Yuan's behavior was simply not inferior. Other than being considerate, it seemed that they did everything for Princess Yi Ning. However, this kind of thing no one dared to ask about it. On the other hand, the first prince of Qi Yuan wanted to say something a few times. Perhaps he wanted to say something serious, but he was blocked by Lu Qingdi every time. Lu Qingdi smiled kindly and seemed to be genuinely happy. He said bluntly that now he just wanted to eat, drink, enjoy the dance and listen to music. He didn't want to talk about anything else. In this way, the first prince of Wei couldn't do anything. After all, Lu Qingdi was the emperor. He was at the same level as his father. If he didn't say anything, he couldn't even say anything. As a guest, it was definitely not a wise move to make the emperor unhappy. As for the fifth prince of Wei, his injuries were definitely not light. In fact, it was not suitable for him to attend. With the medical records of Qi Yuan's imperial doctors, Lu Qingdi wouldn't have any objections even if he didn't attend. However, he insisted on attending and even pretended that nothing had happened. If it weren't for the bruises on his face, one wouldn't be able to tell that he had been severely beaten up yesterday. However, He Zhihai didn't specifically hit his face. Otherwise, even if he wanted to come out today, he definitely wouldn't be able to do it. The first prince of Wei was originally prepared for his fifth brother to rest at the post house. However, when he went out, the other party was already waiting for him. The other party said a few words of concern and said that he didn't need to force himself to go. The emperor of Qi Yuan was not an unreasonable person. However, his fifth brother not only didn't appreciate the kindness, but also mocked and ridiculed him. The first prince of Wei was almost angered to death. It should be known that once this person showed up, some things were hard to say. He didn't know why the other party went crazy, but he couldn't do anything to him. What was the fifth prince of Wei crazy about? He didn't care before, but now he was a person who was going to do great things. He had to be exposed to more things and see more things. Moreover, he naturally couldn't let his good brother monopolize the limelight. Therefore, his performance was actually a bit more active than the former Grand Prince of Wei. If he wasn't toasting a cup of wine with Lu Qingdi, then he was pulling Prince Qiyuan, who was opposite to him, to chat for a bit. It seemed that he had a sense of propriety and was just right. After seeing how arrogant he was yesterday and seeing how he was now, to be honest, some people really wondered if the fifth prince had a twin brother who looked exactly the same. The fifth prince had changed his unruly clothes, and his temperament was much more restrained. He was a little forthright, but he controlled it so that people wouldn't dislike him. On the contrary, people might even like his true nature. Even Lu Qingdi's expression was a little strange. He originally wanted to completely blame yesterday's incident on the fifth prince, but now it seemed that he couldn't bear to do so. Moreover, Lu Qingdi said a few words of concern in advance about the matter that he didn't want to mention. The first prince of Wei's heart was in his mouth. Just as he was about to speak up for his stupid brother, the other party beat him to it. "Thank you, Your Majesty of Qi Yuan, for your concern. I'm fine. Speaking of which, yesterday's incident was also a misunderstanding. I've always respected brave warriors. Yesterday I was itching to fight, so I made a move. Later I found out that he was the son of General He. I've been friends with this person for a long time, but I didn't expect to meet him under such circumstances." The first prince of Wei's face immediately darkened. He wanted to get up and slap this brainless thing to death. On the other hand, the people of Qi Yuan all had strange expressions on their faces, especially Li Hongming, who had seen the fifth prince of Wei's miserable state yesterday. At that time he was still talking tough. How did he change his attitude in just one night? Moreover, based on the relationship between the first prince of Wei and Qi Yuan, it was strange for him to say such words. However, this was a good thing for Qi Yuan. After all, the fifth prince was seriously injured in their territory. No matter how they quibbled, they couldn't change this fact. There was no benefit in biting the fifth prince of Wei. Since the victim didn't say anything, they could only be a little more magnanimous. So that's how it is. Speaking of He Zhihai, this boy has never returned to the capital before. This time he just happened to come back. Maybe it's your fate. When the fifth prince is in Chiyuan, you might as well exchange some pointers with him. After all, it's a rare opportunity. Luqingdi laughed. Learn from him? The fifth prince of Wei's chest and abdomen couldn't stop throbbing. If this happened 2 more times, he might lose his life. His face was a little stiff. He braced himself and said, if there's a chance. He wouldn't let this happen again. The first prince of Wei's face darkened. He didn't say anything else. Everything was messed up by this idiot. In fact, the first prince of Wei couldn't figure out what this idiot was trying to do. It was fine if he didn't know the severity of his actions when he was in Dawei, but he still acted like this in such an occasion? If he really didn't know anything, putting aside the true relationship between Dawei and Qiyuan, his performance was impeccable. Even the first prince of Wei would be amazed. Therefore, it was definitely not that he didn't know anything. However, the first prince of Wei really couldn't figure out what he was trying to do. What was the fifth prince of Wei trying to do? The first prince would never have thought that he had such a huge ambition that he shouldn't have. He wanted a position that he had never thought of before. Therefore, a matter that could cause a lot of problems came to an end. It was really unexpected. Quite some time had passed, but a certain seat in Qiyuan was still empty. Chapter 394. Where is Lao Lu? Why hasn't he appeared yet? Luqingdi couldn't help but frown. There were so many seats and only one was empty, how could it not be conspicuous? However, as a guest it was not good to ask. And on Qiyuan's side they all knew who set up the seats. For them, his special treatment had become a habit. Those who had the power to control didn't say anything. They naturally pretended to be deaf and mute, acting as if they didn't see anything. Speaking of which, the Empress was still ill. Although she was much better than before, her physical strength was still lacking. Attending such an occasion was a burden, and it was possible that her illness would worsen when she returned. Thus, she simply didn't appear at the welcoming banquet. If they wanted to see her, they would have to wait until the day of the emperor's birthday. Luqingdi only had Su Guifei and Qin Shufei by his side, and those below the rank of concubine could only appear on the day of the emperor's birthday. Of course, their natures were completely different from the empress. They wanted to appear but didn't have the qualifications, while the empress was healthy and didn't have a problem if she didn't want to appear. Other than Luqingdi, the only one who could control Li Hongyuan was Su Guifei. However, she always had an appropriate smile on her face. When she heard Luqingdi's words, she sighed and said, "Emperor, it's not like you don't know Yuaner's temper. He is becoming more and more disobedient. Didn't he send someone to say that he would be late? Who knows when he will be late?" Qinxia says that Jin Qinwang has restrained himself a lot since his marriage. Gui Fei Jiejie shouldn't be too harsh on him. Qin Shufei smiled. Thinking about it carefully, beloved concubine is right. It seems that this man still needs to marry before he can settle down. Luqingdi said, feeling a little gratified. If it was a few years earlier, Zhen could have saved a few years of headaches. Li Hongyuan was still abusing his power, but as long as he restrained himself a little, Luqingdi could be comforted. If his other sons did something wrong, they would be scolded by him. This was the difference between them. After so many years, we just had to meet at this time. Can be seen that it is fate. Didn't Great Master Liaochen say that it is a match made in heaven? That's right. Luqingdi nodded. Thinking about it, the Luo family was forced to ask for this marriage. Although he also felt sorry for his sons' considerate people, these good girls had one accident after another. Even if he was the emperor, he had to hold back his guilty conscience. He was already mentally prepared for the worst. Who would have thought that this kind of marriage turned out to be very good? His son had calmed down, and his daughter-in-law was fine without illness or disaster. When imperial concubine Su heard this, her expression didn't change, but her heart wasn't the same. Before they got married, she thought that this girl was a good person, but in the end it was all just an act. She had a bad temper and didn't take her mother-in-law seriously. She even seduced her son all day long. In any case, the more they got together, the more she disliked her. However, there was nothing she could do. There was already a rift between her son and her. The emperor didn't take what she did seriously, and her son was protecting her. What could she do? In the entire harem, there was probably no mother-in-law more aggrieved than her. Imperial concubine Su didn't think about it. She said that she was the best and kindest mother-in-law, but in fact she used this kind of method to suppress Princess Rui until she couldn't breathe. If there was anything wrong, it would be her daughter-in-law's fault. Princess Rui might look relaxed on the surface, but in fact she was more aggrieved and depressed than the other sisters-in-law. She had no one to complain to. There were some things that even if she said, her own mother might not believe her. In the end, Imperial concubine Su was a person with a strong desire for control. She used this seemingly gentle but actually extremely harsh method to make Princess Rui be respectful to her and not dare to say a word. Prince Rui was also bound by reputation and other aspects and couldn't resist. In contrast, Jingwan was a completely different type. She didn't care about Imperial concubine Su's methods of hiding needles in cotton floss. Moreover, she had Li Hongyuan's support and was full of confidence. Speaking of which, the other princesses didn't seem to be as comfortable as Princess Rui. However, even the former Princess Kong didn't have it as bad as Imperial concubine Su under the Empress. Little sister Xu Fei is right. That's fate. The only regret now is that Yuan doesn't have a child yet. I don't know when old Sixth's wife's stomach will have any movement. His words touched the bottom of Lu Qingdi's heart, intentionally or unintentionally. Qin Shufei glanced at Imperial concubine Su. The people who knew Imperial concubine Su the best were definitely the old people who had been serving Lu Qingdi for a few years. Children are also about fate. When it's time there will naturally be a child. Little sister Imperial concubine will be able to hold this grandson sooner or later. Imperial concubine Su's eyes flashed. She had 2 sons but there was no sign of a grandson. Moreover, Yuan was son. The 3 people above were talking. Their voices weren't loud but the people below all tacitly kept quiet. In addition, they were closer to the throne. Even if there was music they were relatively far away. Therefore they could basically hear it clearly. Although everyone's focus might be different, they all listened attentively. Imperial concubine Su was about to speak again when outside, Jin Qinhuang and Jin Qinhuang Fei have arrived. To be honest, as the emperor sitting at the banquet, his son actually arrived late. The old man heard the chamberlain call for his son. No matter if it was the former Wei or the Chong Empire, it was unheard of. However, looking at the expressions of the other people in Qiyuan Empire, they seemed to be accustomed to it. Even the Qiyuan Emperor would not be angry. How strange was this? The women who were originally dancing quickly retreated when they heard the sound. The music also stopped temporarily. Soon 2 figures appeared at the door. Without mentioning anything else, those who hadn't seen Li Hongyuan were shocked by his face. Of course, those who couldn't recover for a long time were in the minority. More people felt that the gap between Jin Qinhuang and the rumor was too big. If they weren't sure of his title, and if they weren't sure that there couldn't be 2 people with the same title in the same country, they really couldn't connect the rumor with the one in front of them. According to the rumor, Jin Qinhuang was malicious, ruthless, and temperamental. Although it didn't mention his appearance, they knew that a person with this kind of temperament, no matter how good his appearance was, would certainly be gloomy and vicious. Then no matter how good his appearance was, it would be destroyed for no reason. However, Jin Qinhuang only looked a little cold and cheerless, but his aura was peaceful. He was like a jade tree, an orchid, handsome and elegant. That incomparably handsome face became more and more prominent, making people almost unable to move their eyes away. However, no matter how outstanding he was, the person standing next to him was still not overshadowed by his brilliance. Although she wasn't a stunning beauty, she was also a very good beauty. Qinhuang Fei was dressed in a grand dress, bright and generous. It felt like she was a completely different person from Jin Qinhuang. However, when the 2 people stood together, it made people feel that they were exceptionally harmonious, as if there was no room for a third person to step in. Li Hongyuan and Jingwan greeted the 3 people above. Lu Qingdi didn't say anything and just waved his hand to let them sit down. There seemed to be a bit of perfunctory disdain on his face, but people with discerning eyes could feel that he was happy. This recognition made some people raise their eyebrows again. Originally, they had heard that Qi Yuan's Lu Qingdi was exceptionally doting on his 6th son. At first, they snorted disapprovingly. There was no father and son in the imperial family. There was no familial affection in the imperial family. Even if it was the so-called doting, it also had a limit. However, now that they saw it with their own eyes, this doting was more than what they had expected. Li Hongyuan and Jingwan sat down and waved away the palace maid who came forward to pour wine. He poured a cup for himself and was about to pour a little for Jingwan when he paused halfway. Warm a pot of green plum wine. Green plum wine had a bit of sweetness and sourness. The alcohol content was also very low. It was very suitable for women who weren't good at drinking. It was obvious who it was prepared for. Jingwan wasn't accustomed to this kind of thing, but that was at home. Right now they were in the palace and there were also envoys from other countries. Jingwan gently smiled and calmly accepted. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan weren't affected. However, those who were there before clearly felt that the atmosphere was a bit gloomy. It was the former Wei's fifth prince who suddenly laughed heartily. Jin Qinhuang came a step late. Shouldn't you punish yourself with a cup? Under normal circumstances, there was nothing wrong with these words. However, when it came to Jin Qinhuang, it was a big problem. Originally, he didn't have any interest in paying attention to these people. His attention was only on Jingwan. Hearing that, he lightly looked over, who? With one word, the former Wei's fifth prince almost couldn't hold it in. The sickly fifth Wangya at the side coughed lightly. Sixth brother, this is De Wei's fifth prince. Li Hongyuan drank a mouthful of wine. Who was beaten up by He Zhihai yesterday? This matter had already been covered up. Now that Li Hongyuan mentioned it, the atmosphere was suddenly a bit awkward. Li Hongyuan acted as if he didn't feel it. He Zhihai really is a waste. Yesterday he still boasted shamelessly to Ben Wang that he beat people until they couldn't get up. Does this former Wei's fifth prince look like he couldn't get up? They all said that one shouldn't expose a person's shortcomings. Li Hongyuan was someone who would poke where it hurts. Moreover, the title of former Wei generally wouldn't be said in front of former Wei people. Li Hongyuan didn't have the slightest taboo. Everything depended on himself. What was called condescending, what was called having no dust in your eyes, what was called looking down on everything, Jin Qinhuang will give you a perfect interpretation. What did little gangster he count as in the northeast border city? What did the former Wei's fifth prince count as in the former Wei's capital city? In front of this lord they were all dregs. This living king of hell was arrogant in a low-key way, arrogant in a gorgeous way. How could ordinary people catch up to his rank? Lao Lu, yesterday's matter was all a misunderstanding. Liqingdi tried to smooth things over. His heart was actually a bit happy and also a bit pitiful for the former Wei people. However, this son, when he provoked him, he didn't even give him face. Former Wei people, it was really embarrassing. They could only admit that they were unlucky. Who told you to go up and flirt with him for no reason? Misunderstanding. Li Hongyuan sneered. That ridicule couldn't be more obvious. Liqingdi's old face was a bit embarrassed. The veins on his forehead were throbbing. Letting this evil creature participate in the welcoming banquet, perhaps it was a mistake in itself. Why couldn't he remember the lesson? Jingwan suddenly reached out and took the cup in Li Hongyuan's hand. She filled it up and smiled. Fu Huang said it was a misunderstanding, then it was a misunderstanding. Chapter 395. Li Hongyuan glanced at her, took the cup and looked away. His meaning couldn't be more obvious. Liqingdi felt inexplicably stifled. His father was speaking, yet he still dared to mock him. Although he wasn't mocking him in essence, he didn't say anything because of his wife's words. Liqingdi didn't know what Imperial Consort Su was thinking. Otherwise he would have more or less felt the same way. However, he didn't say anything in the end. If he scolded him a few more times, he might not be able to stop. Regardless of what other people were thinking, the former fifth prince of Wei was definitely furious. If it weren't for a certain lord who behind him hinting to stop him, he might have gone berserk on the spot. However, going berserk in front of the king of hell was probably not comparable to being beaten up by He Zhihai yesterday. Even if the situation was less serious, he might not even be able to get out of bed before leaving Qiyuan. However, although he didn't act out, his gaze was as if he wanted to eat someone. However, the hatred Li Hongyuan attracted in the past was gone. This gaze was completely indifferent to him because he didn't have the qualifications to be vigilant. Therefore, the former fifth prince of Wei glared cross-eyed for a long time. It made him more and more angry and it made his eyes uncomfortable. There was no effect at all. To the people of Qiyuan, it was definitely a delightful thing to make someone from an enemy country unhappy. This was especially so for those who had been in deep trouble because of Li Hongyuan. When they saw others being humiliated by the king of hell, they couldn't help but gloat. They strangely found a sense of balance and joy. It wasn't strange for the people of Qiyuan to have such a mentality. However, the former eldest prince of Wei was also very happy. This idiot can't do anything right. He deserves to be humiliated. After that, the performance continued. The former fifth prince of Wei wasn't as active as before. The former eldest prince of Wei gradually took over the main stage. He also toasted from time to time and said a few words. However, Li Hongyuan didn't say anything because he wasn't sure of the other party's attitude. He didn't want to embarrass himself. Li Hongyuan was not interested in such occasions, but he had to give Lu Qingdi some face. Otherwise he would most likely not show up. The others were basically sitting upright, but he lazily supported his chin with one hand and used the other to pinch a nut from the table. The hard shell was as easy as pinching a peanut shell. It looked very easy, but he didn't eat the kernel inside. He put it all into the small plate beside Jingwan's hand. Jingwan occasionally took one and ate it. Then she whispered to the 7th princess consort who was sitting on her right. Because Li Hongyuan was close to the side of the minister's seat, his current posture made it seem like he was enjoying the dance, but in fact it was not. When Jingwan turned back to pick up the nuts again, the small plate was almost full. Wangya, it's enough. Li Hongyuan met her gaze indifferently. This prince is bored. Those who didn't know would probably think that Li Hongyuan meant that he didn't peel the nuts especially for her. Don't flatter yourself. Jingwan sighed slightly in her heart. She really didn't know what to say to him. However, based on her understanding of him, he did peel the nuts for her at first, and it was probably true that he was bored. Speaking of which, let alone him, Jingwan also felt quite bored. Originally, on such occasions it was just to make a good impression, build relationships, or defeat the enemy. By the way, they could express their brotherly respect to the minister on the minister's seat. However, these had nothing to do with Li Hongyuan. He was not interested in doing these things and he didn't need to do it. Therefore, he felt bored about other people's affairs. The people in the musical house are getting more and more useless. What kind of people are they teaching? They are old-fashioned, boring, and unoriginal. They're all the same. The most important thing is that even if they are taught over and over again, the parts that should be outstanding are also boring and uninteresting. Therefore, the musical house spared no effort and spent countless efforts. The teachers racked their brains to teach the girls, and the girls under them also trained hard day and night. It was not only to satisfy the minister and be rewarded, but also to avoid being disliked and punished if they didn't do well. After all, the people in the musical house were basically the family members of guilty officials. These people were much more inferior than many ordinary palace servants. Moreover, there were many perverts in the musical house. For those who used to be high and mighty after falling into their hands, they liked to abuse them in all kinds of ways to get psychological pleasure. The more beautiful they were and the more famous they were, the more insults they would suffer. It seemed that they would become more noble if they trampled on those who used to be noble. It was not that no one wanted to use the identity of dancers or singers in the musical house to get the attention of the minister on the dragon throne and get rid of the frightening place of the musical house. However, such people were very few. In addition to attracting the beauty and talent of the minister, they also needed enough patience and to know how to observe people's expressions. The most important thing was that they had to put themselves low enough. If they wanted to achieve their goal, they had to at least live and at least keep their faces. These were not easy things. I think it's not bad. Your Highness is too picky, Jingwan said with a smile. Your Highness is too picky. As long as it's not too horrible to look at, everything is fine. Yes, yes, yes. Your Highness, whatever you say. Jingwan smiled good-naturedly. However, if you ask this concubine to say, it's because your Highness has seen too much of it and is naturally tired of it. This concubine is different. In the past, when I was in Chitan Prefecture, things like listening to music and appreciating dance were very rare. Li Hongyuan snorted and said in his heart, you are tired of it, aren't you? Originally, after people paid attention to people like Li Hongyuan at first, few people would pay attention to him. After all, there was no benefit to him and he might cause trouble for himself. However, even so, most people's attention was still on him. He was too special and it was impossible not to pay attention to him. In this case, when you are free, let the musical house send people to the prince's mansion. After the birthday you will have more free time. Even if it's once every other day after a year and a half, it won't be too late for your Highness to come and tell me what you think. Li Hongyuan suggested leisurely, wanting to let his princess experience his mood this morning. Your Highness, you did it on purpose, didn't you? In this way, even if you are not tired of it, you will be tired of it. After that, what can you do to pass the time? Isn't there an opera troupe in the mansion? If that's not enough, you can add in a folk vaudeville troupe. Otherwise, you can find a storyteller. Let them line up and wait. You can choose whatever you want. You can do the same thing every day or mix them together. It's up to you. The living king of hell was indifferent. He spoke as if these were all his own pets and could do whatever he wanted. Jingwan looked a little helpless. Let's not talk about other things. Just the famous opera troupes in the capital have to be booked at least 1 or 2 months in advance. It's not up to me. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan and suddenly straightened up. If I want someone who dares to compete with me. If I order it today, who dares to delay it until tomorrow? Although he was as indifferent as always, the domineering inside was obvious, and it was natural to be domineering. Jingwan was choked by his words, let alone others. No wonder all the enemies in the capital didn't have any friends. With this kind of conduct, it would be strange if he had any friends. In fact, even if Li Hongyuan's personality wasn't so bad, he probably didn't have any friends. Because he was an old man with a young shell. Those who were the same age as his shell were far inferior to him. In his eyes, those people were like little children. And for those who were the same age as his shell, he was at least a level higher than them. Moreover, he believed that his body was young and his heart wasn't old. Naturally, he couldn't get along with those old fogies. Therefore, the people in front of him were either little children or old men. He just happened to be in the middle, so it would be strange if he had any friends. Of course, in Li Hongyuan's eyes, no matter if it was the shell or the core, his wife was the closest to him. In short, he firmly refused to admit that he was an old cow nibbling on young grass. Jingwan didn't say anything. She just glanced at the emperor's seat. Li Hongyuan turned to look at Lu Qingdi. That's true. Imperial father can still snatch. The veins on Lu Qingdi's forehead popped out again. He almost smashed the cup in his hand. I don't have the time. Not to mention that Lu Qingdi was busy every day and couldn't be indulged in pleasure. Moreover, how could people from outside the palace casually enter the palace? Even if a certain opera troupe entered the palace, it would be strictly examined. There were a lot of things to do. Although he was the emperor, he was far less free than people from outside the palace. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan again. The only one who can snatch doesn't know how to snatch at all. So, Princess Consort, you can rest assured and do whatever you want. Chapter 396. Jingwan only wanted to seal a certain someone's mouth. Not only was he drawing hatred for himself, but he was also drawing hatred for her. Imperial concubine Su also spoke up at this time. Yuan, what are you talking about? Do you think everyone is like you, doing such shameful things all day long? Although your princess consort is not from an aristocratic family, she is still from a scholarly family. Her words and actions are measured and she is generous and decent. She is also deeply influenced by her grandfather and grandmother. She is a model of proper etiquette. You should learn from her. These words sounded like a complete praise for Jingwan. In fact, Imperial concubine Su, who knew Jingwan's nature, said these words to raise Jingwan up high. As the saying goes, the higher the image, the better. Once she did something wrong, she would be attacked and criticized even more. In fact, Imperial concubine Su was playing a trick. To put it bluntly, she was treating Princess Consort Rue the same way she treated Princess Consort Rue. She was putting shackles on Princess Consort Rue, so that she could not do as she pleased. However, not many people could see this except for Princess Consort Rue, who was deeply harmed, and Prince Rue, who knew his mother relatively well. Li Hongyuan of course knew this method very well. Jingwan had little contact with her, but she knew a lot about her. Moreover, as the person being targeted, how could she not feel it? Other than her, the only other person who knew this was Qin Shufei. She glanced at noble consort Su as an incomprehensible emotion flashed through her eyes. Jingwan just smiled and did not say anything. After all, Imperial concubine Su was talking to Li Hongyuan. It was not good for her to rashly interrupt. Li Hongyuan calmly met Imperial consort Su's gaze. Imperial consort mother really likes a graceful and modest gentleman like Li Hongming. If Imperial consort mother has the same expectations for a Ken, then Imperial consort mother is destined to be disappointed. If a Ken could learn to be obedient, I would have done so long ago. Noble consort Su didn't expect that her words would touch her son's sensitive nerves again. He was just used to treating Jingwan. The essence was on Jingwan, not her son. Moreover, she was also used to teaching her son a lesson. Both of her sons had been like this since they were young. If they did something wrong, she would teach them a lesson and punish them. She never felt that it was wrong. However, ever since the incident last time, this pattern was broken. She had to pay more attention to what she said to her son. She didn't pay attention to it just now. Imperial Mother didn't mean that. If it weren't for the fact that she was considering this occasion, noble consort Su would have lost her composure. When a woman marries, she follows her husband. No matter what Lady Luo did in the past, since she married me, she naturally follows me. Noble consort Su had the illusion that she had lifted a stone and smashed it on her own foot. Without a doubt, Jingwan was simply forced to wallow in the mire with the living king of hell. If she wasn't arrogant or overbearing and instead maintained the upright rules, wouldn't that be singing a different tune from her own husband? Forget about other people, but who was Jin Qinhuang? He was the living king of hell. Singing a different tune from him, was she disliking that her life was too long? Jingwan held back her laughter. This was simply giving her a big halo of arrogant in the presence of her husband. In the future, it was only right for her to become more and more arrogant and overbearing. Moreover, it had nothing to do with the Luo family. After all, before Jingwan got married, although her reputation wasn't prominent, it was still pretty good. The elders were especially fond of her. Therefore it was said that the living king of hell protecting his wife was really too much. Imperial Mother really didn't mean that, naturally. Alright, don't say these depressing words. Lu Qingdi faintly said. On noble consort Su's face, she wanted to say something but hesitated. Her seemingly sad expression instantly froze. Fortunately, she restrained herself quickly, otherwise it would have been very exciting. Tonight she almost couldn't hold back her laughter again. Although Lu Qingdi was a scum, but because of Li Hongyuan's many years of deliberate creation, he was indeed extremely biased towards Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan ignored him, but he still stuck to him and looked for abuse. The other sons racked their brains to curry favor with him, but he said that they had ulterior motives. If they did something wrong, he would definitely wildly criticize them. Perhaps he wouldn't do anything to them, but he would definitely cut off their wings more or less. As for Li Hongyuan, Lu Qingdi was often angered by him to the point of stamping with thunder, but he was just all bark and no bite. Even if it was noble consort Su, Lu Qingdi was obviously biased towards his son. From this point of view, Lu Qingdi was often blessed by God. The atmosphere was strange for a moment and then it seemed to return to normal. However, everything after that seemed to be very dull. Perhaps it was because noble consort Su's disdain made him sad again, but this sadness turned into an inexplicable anger. Li Hongyuan vented his anger on others. Whenever someone said a few words, he coldly threw out the word noisy. Lu Qingdi acted as if he didn't hear and didn't ask, so the people below had to obediently shut up. In fact, Lu Qingdi was quite relieved that this evil creature didn't directly leave. Otherwise, he would more or less lose his dignity in front of the people of other countries. Because of Li Hongyuan's disturbance, it seemed that some people who wanted to achieve a certain goal had to give up in the end. And so, the welcoming banquet passed by uneventfully. The only thing that wasn't peaceful was that some people's hearts were in chaos. When Jingwan left the palace, she glanced at Princess Yi Ning, who frequently peeked at Li Hongyuan. However, because of the occasion, she still restrained herself. As long as one didn't deliberately pay attention to her, one basically wouldn't notice. However, this kind of thing, as the person involved, she simply couldn't be too sensitive. Jingwan thought that she really guessed it right. She actually had her eyes on someone. This was the real version of the evildoer who brought disaster to the country. She just hoped that Princess Yi Ning's mind was still clear and she wouldn't do anything stupid. Jingwan believed that there were some things that she would never be soft-hearted about. In the next few days, Li Hongyuan used all his strength to train He Zhihai to death because He Zhihai was really too weak. His fists were like cotton. Once Li Hongyuan's sea of consciousness fought, he was a person who fought based on his instincts. What Li Hongyuan wanted to do now was to ruthlessly change this point. This was not something that could be accomplished overnight. However, when He Zhihai's consciousness got used to using his brain in a big fight, coupled with his super strong beastly intuition, he might not even need to deliberately learn things like military strategy and tactics, and he would be able to learn them without a teacher. And once this kind of person graduated, they would usually not walk the righteous path, but the path of trickery. At the same time, envoys from other countries also arrived one after another. These people's cultural background was far different from Qi Yuan's. They were definitely different in many aspects. The most obvious thing that was displayed on the outside was definitely their clothing. It could be said that they were in a variety of styles, and it made the people see a lot of strange things. The welcoming banquet continued. Naturally, it was completely different from the first one. Even if there were women present, they would no longer receive special treatment. Chapter 397. The reception banquet continued. Naturally, it was completely different from the first reception banquet. Even if there were women present, there was no special treatment. Moreover, the customs of these countries were more open than the Qiyuan. It was normal for women to go out and even establish their own families. There were even cases of women becoming officials. Of course, these had nothing to do with Jingwan. Without that special reception banquet, Li Hongyuan didn't need help. Basically, there was no problem at all for her to continue staying in Jinqinwangfu. However, the heavens didn't fulfill people's wishes. Jingwan held the invitation from Princess Wei Yining. In another country's territory, there are still so many things to do. Princess Yining was like a guest who was holding a banquet in someone else's house and invited a lot of hosts with great fanfare. Of course, this house was very big and there were a lot of people. This guest hadn't invited the real master of the house. Even so, it was still very inconceivable. It's up to you whether to go or not. If you don't want to go, you don't need to care. Li Hongyuan said. Jingwan's gaze fell on Li Hongyuan. With a smile that wasn't a smile, she opened her mouth. I'm the person that Princess Yining really wants to invite. The other people are just incidental. The invitation also said sincerely that you must give face. In any case, you're a country's princess on the same level as Qiyuan. It's not good to not give face. It should be known that the people that Princess Yining invited were not in the minority. Whether it was married or not, there were also a bunch of Kim Wangfei and Zhun Wangfei. Just because she said to give face, I'll give face. Who does she think she is? Also, what does she mean by the person that she really wants to invite is you? Did the invitation say that? Is Wang Ye pretending to be confused? The person that she really wants to invite is just the so-called. Her goal is you, Wang Ye. Li Hongyuan slightly raised his eyes. So Wan's meaning is, you still want to give face to a woman who wants your husband's invitation. You think that it's not good to not go? Jingwan pursed her lips and smiled. I really thought Wang Ye didn't know. However, according to what your highness said, I really don't need to give him any face. Even if Li Hongyuan didn't experience what happened in his previous life, with his sharp senses, how could he not know that he had been stared at eagerly for a long time? And the meaning of those gazes, even if they were young men who hadn't yet awakened to love, didn't know what 1 or 2 or 3 gazes meant. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dozens, hundreds or even more. In his previous life, Li Hongyuan didn't have a bad reputation. On the contrary, he had a good reputation. He was definitely the one with the most romantic luck. Many women fell for him one after another. For men, this kind of thing might satisfy their vanity at the beginning, but when the number of women increased, it would be very annoying. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan wasn't keen on this from the start. Just like that, Jingwan really didn't attend the banquet. She didn't even give an excuse to postpone it. It was as if she hadn't received the invitation. She didn't respond at all. Speaking of which, there were many people who were watching her actions. When she didn't respond, many of them were a little uneasy. However, in this case, others would tacitly agree that she would attend the banquet. However, in the end, Jingwan's slap was really harsh. Regardless of what Princess Yining was thinking, Jingwan's attitude of ignoring her completely was a slap to her face. In her own country, Princess Yining could be said to be able to get whatever she wanted. No matter who it was, they would have to give her some face. She had never been treated like this before, so how could she not be angry? When all the people who came for him except for Jingwan, she almost exploded on the spot. Even if she didn't smash things or throw a tantrum, she still mocked and ridiculed a few words, saying that Qiyuan thought highly of himself and didn't put other countries in his eyes and so on. Speaking of which, no matter who was present and whether they had any grudges against Jingwan at this time, whether they were willing or not, they had to stand on Jingwan's side. If they stood on Princess Yining's side and accused Jingwan of being rude, they would be scolded to death by their own people. Princess Yining was favored and powerful. Compared to Princess Minxiang, how much weaker could she be? Therefore she scolded back on the spot. Her meaning was obvious. Who do you think you are? You are just a princess of the former way. Do you really think you can represent the former way? How shameless are you? If you are really favored, why would you show your face in public and run to other countries? What can a princess do in other countries? Nothing more than find a man. Sixth sister-in-law didn't come alone. Even if there were so many people, it was not giving you face. So angry, what's wrong? Do you like sixth imperial brother? Princess, you like a married man. Do you have any shame? Do you know how to write the word shame? Wait, Princess Min Xiang went all out and didn't hold back at all. Princess Yi Ning's thoughts were exposed and she was humiliated like this. Her face turned red and she almost lost her composure. However, she didn't feel much better. She never knew what tolerance was. She returned the favor on the spot and didn't hold back either. Speaking of which, Princess Min Xiang was just saying it casually. After all, Li Hongyuan's face was there. She was so afraid of him that sometimes she would be distracted when looking at him. Not to mention those girls who were raised in the boudoir and didn't know the taste of the world. She didn't want to accidentally hit the nail on the head. Although Princess Min Xiang wasn't born from the Empress didn't have a daughter. Therefore, Princess Min Xiang's status was the highest among the sisters. In addition, Le Qingdi liked her. Her status was not much different from Princess Yi Ning's in the former way. The two of them had the same status. To a certain extent, they were natural enemies. To put it bluntly, they were like two female tigers on the top of the mountain. When they were in their own territory, they naturally didn't do anything. They each lived their own lives and were domineering and arrogant. But once they met, they would definitely fight. Even if there was no reason, they would definitely fight in seconds. Therefore, although it hadn't reached the point of fighting, the scene could be said to be chaotic. This banquet naturally ended prematurely. Those who weren't willing to come to this banquet would definitely not stay any longer. They would leave and beat each other up. And the two princesses were naturally unbearably angry. Even though they left, the anger in their hearts didn't dissipate. Naturally, they didn't stop talking. Princess Min Xiang said what kind of thing Princess Yi Ning was. She dared to flaunt her power in Qi Yuan. She was already giving face to the former way by not giving her face. And Princess Yi Ning said that Princess Min Xiang was uneducated and unruly. She even called herself a royal princess. She was simply an out-and-out shrew. The commotion wasn't small. Very soon, those who should know and those who shouldn't know all knew about it. Princess Yi Ning went to her two elder brothers and complained in all kinds of ways, not to mention the former way's fifth prince. He was already seriously injured. In the end, he didn't care about his body. Not only did he force himself to attend the banquet, he even drank without restraint. Without a doubt, it affected the normal recovery of his injuries. Because he drank too much, it was difficult for his wounds to heal. He must have suffered many times. Because of this, he definitely wasn't in the mood to care about Princess Yi Ning. Princess Yi Ning went to the door and only received one word. Scram. And her eldest royal brother looked at her coldly. That gaze was unprecedentedly cold. Yi Ning trembled under his gaze. She couldn't continue crying. Finally, the former way's eldest royal prince revealed a cold smile. Yi Ning, don't think that koala doesn't know what you're thinking. I have to say, you really have a lot of guts. Of course, you're also a little clever. But do you think you can achieve your goal by doing this? You're indeed a naive little girl who doesn't know the ways of the world. I don't understand what eldest royal brother is saying. Yi Ning's gaze was somewhat erratic. She didn't dare to look straight at her elder brother. Ah, the former way's eldest royal prince chuckled with endless ridicule. Fine, Yi Ning doesn't understand. This elder brother will explain it to you clearly. When you held this banquet, although I didn't know your purpose at first, I let you mess around. But now, no matter who didn't show up, even if it wasn't Jin Qian Wangfei, anyone, you would probably use it as a pretext to make a fuss. Even if everyone you invited arrived, you would still look for trouble. And your essential purpose is to make a fuss about Jin Qianwang to get rid of your predetermined fate. In your eyes, you are the most honorable princess of Dawei. Now you're just a souffle of a Wangye who has no power or influence. In addition, the two countries are hostile. If this matter succeeds, then Qi Yuan will take advantage of it. Qi Yuan has no reason to disagree. If you make a fuss about it, they only need to push the boat with the current. When the time comes, Dawei can only help you. That's what you think, right? Princess Yi Ning was completely exposed. She simply didn't hide it anymore. Facing her eldest royal brother, she became bold and confident. So what if I am? Yi Ning, you are Dawei's princess. You are extraordinarily honorable. Dawei gave birth to you and raised you, giving you the best of everything. Because of your own selfishness, you disregarded the face and interests of the entire Dawei. Who are you worthy of? Even if it's Fu Huang, if he knew, I'm afraid that he couldn't wait to slap you to death. Princess Yining's face was gloomy and cold. Even that pair of beautiful eyes were destroyed at this moment. I'm Dewey's most honorable princess? Those lowly bastards that were born by sluts didn't go to the political marriage. Each and every one of them went to the capital to choose a prince consort, build a princess Fu, enjoy glory and splendor, free and unfettered. But you want to marry me to a barren land, lonely and without anyone to rely on. My little life is always threatened. You treat me like this, why do you still want me to think for Dewey? You treat me like this, so I naturally have to think for myself. Dewey's interests and face go to hell. Princess Yining was hysterical, her voice sharp. The former Wei crown prince inexplicably smiled. He took 2 steps forward and suddenly reached out to pinch Princess Yining's chin, not allowing her to struggle at all. You know best who caused your situation today. If it weren't for those things, would you have been pushed out for the political marriage? Yining, you should know that not executing you is already a great kindness. You still want to enjoy glory and splendor in the capital, dream on? Originally, if you were obedient, I might have helped you and chosen a better husband for you. But what you did made me very unhappy. What do you think I should do? Princess Yining slapped his hand away. It's not my fault, it's not my fault. Just because he's a man, the crown prince, and I'm a woman, everything should be borne by me? Based on what? Based on what? She looked crazy, her eyes were full of unwillingness, resentment and indescribable sadness. The former Wei crown prince's eyes flashed with excitement. So it was all true really. If he caught the real evidence, then Dewey's crown prince, who was at the peak of his power, would. Yining, I also know that you've been wronged. How about you tell me everything? As long as you tell me, I'll help you stay in Qiyuan. How about it? Princess Yining gradually came back to her senses. Are you tricking me? She clearly acted as if she knew everything. But thinking about it, if she really knew, she would have used this matter to make things difficult for the crown prince. How could there be no movement until now? After all, this matter had not happened in a day or two. She had lost control of her emotions for a moment. It's not impossible for you to think so. Yining, consider this elder brother's words. If this elder brother ascends the throne, I will also be your strongest backing. I guarantee that you will not suffer the slightest grievance. Even if Great Wei and Qiyuan are at war, I will similarly not let you suffer any harm. Anyway, you don't care about Dewey anymore. Naturally, you don't have to care about the crown prince. Besides, he's the one who caused you to be like this. Princess Yining's eyes flashed with struggle. Yes, it was all his fault. It was all her brother's fault. But, mother, what a silly girl. If the Empress didn't agree, you naturally wouldn't be like this. It's obvious that she has abandoned you. Don't try to drive a wedge between us. Mother has always loved me the most. Princess Yining naturally didn't believe his words. She remembered how heartbroken her mother was when she left the capital. If there was a way, her mother wouldn't. You're really stupid. If you protect the crown prince, she may become the Empress Dowager in the future and enjoy honor and wealth. Without the crown prince, do you think she can still live like that? When her position was not threatened, you were naturally her favorite child. You almost ruined everything for her. I'm afraid she even has the heart to strangle you to death. Impossible, Princess Yining screamed. Whether it's possible or not, you know best in your heart. Now that it's like this, why do you have to deceive yourself and others, Yining? The former Wei crown prince had a gentle smile on his lips. He pinched Princess Yining's neck, forcing her to look at him. Although Yining is a little arrogant, she's not an ignorant fool, right? Not sure if it was his actions or words that had an effect, but Princess Yining gradually calmed down. She looked at the former Wei crown prince for a long time. At first, her eyes were still a little unfocused, as if she was recalling something. Gradually, her eyes became firm. She pushed away her brother's hand and tidied up her messy hair and clothes. She became the noble princess again, even if she was arrogant and unrestrained. Why should I believe you? Yining, you don't have a choice now, do you? So you can only believe me. Princess Yining's eyes were gloomy, but she didn't lose her composure. Okay, after this is done, before you leave the capital of Qiyuan, I will tell you. The former Wei crown prince smiled and nodded. He didn't express any dissatisfaction. In this way, the brother and sister reached an agreement. Under the control of the former Wei crown prince, some things became more and more clear. So in less than 2 days, the envoys from other countries who came one after another heard about this matter. For Li Hongyuan, this was just like a romantic affair. He was just lucky in love. The harshest words to hear were, "He just has a good appearance, but it can't cover up the fact that he is useless." There was nothing more to it. The one who was hurt the most was naturally Princess Yining. Her background was like this. Even if she was treated unfairly and hurt, she could only suffer more rumors and slanders, and suffer the most bitter attacks. Moreover, she was the princess of the former Wei. Anyone she liked would suffer less than those who liked Qiyuan, because not only would they attack her from a small angle, they would also criticize her from the righteousness of the country. Originally, the other people of the former Wei should be her backing, but at this time, they could only be cold and emotionless and even criticize her more than outsiders. She used to be held in the palm of others' hands and listened to a lot of flattery. Now all that filled her ears were abuse and criticism. It was as unpleasant as it could be. Even the people who served her didn't comfort her. Although they didn't treat her like the others, they still looked at her with incomprehensible eyes, and then they kept silent. Princess Yining only felt wronged and indignant. She just liked a man and didn't do anything outrageous. Why did everyone treat her like this? In anger, she naturally smashed all kinds of things and drove out all the people closest to her. For this kind of thing, the only person Princess Yining could complain to was her first imperial brother. The former Wei crown prince comforted her softly as she wished, but in fact he didn't put his heart into it. According to the former Wei crown prince's temperament and the Qiyuan's Prince Rui's temperament, he should know that if he really put his heart into it, he wouldn't say such perfunctory words. Why did this matter become so big? Is this how you help me? Princess Yining listened to his repeated words and became more and more annoyed. She began to question him discontentedly. Anyway, it was her first imperial brother who needed her now. She wasn't afraid. The former Wei crown prince didn't get angry, although she didn't know if he was really not angry or just pretending. Yining's words are heart-wrenching. If I didn't stop them, you would have been scolded by the Wei Kingdom's officials. You know that this time there is a famous iron-mouth official accompanying you. As long as he catches something, he will be merciless. He is the most upright and selfless. Even Father Emperor has a headache because of him. Do you think he will let this matter go so easily? He didn't go to you. All the pressure is borne by me. Yining, your words are making me sad. When Princess Yining heard this, she couldn't help but tremble. When she was in the Great Way, because of some of her matters, even her imperial mother was impeached. She hated and feared that old man, but there was nothing wrong with his conduct. He was also loyal and devoted. Even if imperial father had a headache, he never punished him. Thinking of this, she gnashed her teeth in hatred. The former Wei crown prince continued, as for the outside matters, this is the capital of Qiyuan. It is not the capital of the Wei kingdom. The entire courier station is filled with Qiyuan people. We have to rely on them for food and drink. Some things are out of our control. However, looking on the bright side, the people of Qiyuan seem to be adding fuel to the fire. Presumably, they are also interested in what you are thinking. The reason why they are stepping on you is merely to lower your status and seek benefits for their Qiyuan. What right do they have to do this? Princess Yining was sad and angry. Tears fell down her cheeks. What a silly girl. What else do you need? The former Wei kingdom and Qiyuan are enemies. Then isn't it natural for them to belittle the other party? Moreover, this girl has to hold on to her status and wait for others to marry her. Only then can she raise her status. If she throws herself at them, no matter how noble she is, she will be as cheap as mud. The former Wei crown prince chuckled. Such undisguised mockery. Princess Yining glared at him hatefully. The former Wei crown prince did not mind. They were temporarily in the same boat, but it did not mean that he would be obedient to her. If you want to achieve your goal, you naturally have to be patient. Yining, if you feel that you can't take it anymore, I will go and meet the Emperor of Qiyuan and ask him to suppress this matter. I can even turn the tables and say that Qiyuan is ruining the reputation of our Wei Kingdom's princess. From this we can ask the Emperor of Qiyuan for benefits. But in this way what you want will no longer be possible. No. Princess Yining immediately rejected. When she thought of the appearance of Prince Jin of Qiyuan, she could not help but blush and her heart beat faster. She had never seen such a good-looking man. Since the beginning of love, this was the first time her heart had been moved. Previously she had a hazy good impression of the outstanding young masters of the Wei Kingdom. But the moment she saw Prince Jin of Qiyuan, she threw it out of the window. When the former Wei Crown Prince saw her shy appearance in an instant, he did not need to guess to know what she was thinking. Their Wei Kingdom's most honorable princess was willing to lower herself like this. It was no wonder that she would be trampled on. With her like this, even if she achieved her wish, she would not have a good ending. She was blinded by love and did not think about the situation of the two countries. Did she think that by sticking to him she would be able to get the favor she wanted? Did she think that she was an outstanding beauty, or did she have the means to control people's hearts? Prince Jin of Qiyuan, that kind of person, it was obvious that he had seen countless beauties. An enemy country's princess was specially sent to his door to be humiliated and vented. Therefore, if Princess Yi Ning was like this, then no matter how unpleasant it was to hear, she would still have to bear it. Although this was basically expected, the former Wei Crown Prince still felt that it was a bit strange. After all, if Yi Ning's reputation was too bad, then Qiyuan would also be criticized if they accepted her. After all, if a man's woman was too bad, then he would usually be ridiculed and ridiculed. Plus, Qiyuan only wanted to trample on Yi Ning to belittle the former Wei Kingdom and did not want to accept this person at all. When he thought of this possibility, the former Wei Crown Prince slightly narrowed his eyes. However, this was not in line with the rules of benefits. No matter how he thought about it, it was more beneficial to accept this person. It would damage the reputation of the former Wei Kingdom and they would get a beauty. Moreover, in order to not lose face, the former Wei Kingdom would definitely give a generous dowry. On the other hand, Qiyuan would not give any betrothal gifts. As the saying goes, if you want to marry or not, then you are not the official wife, so there are not so many rules to follow. Furthermore, now that things had escalated to this stage, if Qiyuan did not pick her up, then Yi Ning would only have a dead end. If she died, then everything would be written off. Former Wei would definitely turn around and cause trouble for Qiyuan. This was something that Qiyuan could not possibly be unaware of. So what was the problem? What was the problem? On Qiyuan's side, everyone, including Lu Qingdi, wanted to know what the problem was. However, the former Wei Crown Prince had a conspiracy theory, and so did the Qiyuan side. After hearing the rumors, they knew that the former Wei Kingdom's people did not immediately come to Lu Qingdi to suppress the matter. However, the strange thing was that even if Princess Yi Ning had her own plans, the former Wei Kingdom's crown prince and a few of the former Wei Kingdom's important officials would not be so foolish as to ruin their reputation and make such a big deal out of it. Who would believe that there was no conspiracy? However, no matter how hard they racked their brains, they could not figure out what the former Wei Kingdom was trying to do. In fact, some of the officials in Qiyuan had a rough idea of what was going on, especially the Minister of Personnel. However, no one would say anything. Indeed, if they went to the King of Hell, the male lead of this scandal, he might be able to tell them what the problem was. Speaking of which, the source of this scandal was Princess Min Xiang. She was the one who unknowingly exposed the matter. Princess Yi Ning had not done anything yet. In Jingwan's opinion, even if they wanted to do something, they would have to wait for Princess Yi Ning to come to them. Then she would see her husband's methods. It was just a simple order, but he was simply too good at it. However, Jingwan felt that it was a little out of character to let the King of Hell use such methods that were more inclined towards the inner residents. She did not hold back and asked directly. Li Hongyuan could not help but laugh. He hugged Jingwan and ruffled her hair. He was quite smart. Why did she go into a dead end on this kind of question? There is no distinction between good and bad methods. As long as the goal is achieved perfectly, you can use different methods on different people. You can't think that a man is not a man just because he uses inner residence methods. You have to know that some people can't be too generous because it won't work. A black cat or a white cat. If it can catch a mouse, it is a good cat. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows. Although this description is not completely correct, it is close. I know. After all, you have to choose the right person to use the method on. You don't have to choose the color of the cat's fur to catch a mouse. I was just thinking about it wrongly. It was probably because she had heard comments such as a man using a woman's methods. It's a little petty that she did not immediately understand. In fact, these are not important. This time the main thing is to tell Wanwan that when dealing with enemies, even if they haven't done anything, you have to be prepared in advance. Even if you don't kill them directly, you have to be prepared for a rainy day so that you can be invincible in the future. In the end, you are still too soft-hearted. You don't take action when others haven't done anything, and when some things really happen, it may be too late to do anything. It's good to be on guard, but you can only be a thief for 1,000 days, but not a thief for 1,000 days. The best way is to catch the thief. For such an obvious enemy, you should take the initiative to gain the upper hand. Jingwan was stunned. Although Li Hongyuan might be making a mountain out of a molehill for this matter, what about other things in the future? What about those enemies who obviously wanted to take people's lives at all times? Could they still passively wait for the enemy to strike first? Even if they were on guard, they could not guarantee that nothing would go wrong at all times. It was not like when they were in the Luo family now. No matter how fierce it was just a small matter. It was also not like in their previous life. Now people could easily take people's lives. Even if it was not for themselves, they had to do something for the people they cared about. If they waited until the moment something happened to change, it might really be too late. Jingwan hugged Li Hongyuan and buried her head in his neck. "Ah Yuan, I know. Li Hongyuan gently stroked Jingwan's back. He didn't want to force Jingwan to grow up, but it was better to do it step by step than to do it all at once. One had to know that growing up in an instant was often very cruel. Most people simply couldn't handle it and broke down. Li Hongyuan couldn't be more familiar with that feeling. He hoped that Jingwan would not be so gentle to the enemy. Those women who threw themselves at her were secondary. The main thing was the current situation. Although he was strategizing, he might not be able to take care of everything. Because he was a human, not a god. Moreover, Wan's soft-heartedness may be exploited by others. This Princess Yi Ning's future matters, leave it to me to deal with. After all, this Princess Yi Ning was not only a love rival, but also a real enemy in the truest sense. Kindness to the enemy was cruelty to oneself. This sentence was not just for show, especially when it was between two hostile countries. Hey, that's not a problem. Li Hongyuan naturally raised both hands in agreement when his wife was willing to do it. Looking at the current situation, if we don't accept that Princess Yi Ning, she seems to have a dead end. But we can't let her die. It's completely impossible for you to accept her. Why don't we find someone else to take over? Not only can we save her life, but the man who takes over, others won't dare to make irresponsible remarks. Li Hongyuan smiled. Wan wants to give us a concubine? Can't we? Jingwan also smiled. Think about it, she is a princess of a country. How wronged it is to be a concubine to a powerless prince like you. But it's different if she is imperial father's concubine. As long as she is given a slightly higher position, it will be giving face to the former way. After all, they are an unrestrained princess. Not only did we accept her, but we also gave her enough honor. If the former way doesn't reciprocate, won't they feel embarrassed? That's right. Li Hongyuan expressed his agreement. But if this matter is to be done, I can only say that I can't do it. What's done can't be undone. It's not difficult. If this kind of thing happens to the emperor, then it's purely a romantic affair. No one will say anything. Li Hongyuan didn't care about it. Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan. What was it? Stuffing someone into the emperor's bed? In fact, it wasn't difficult. Especially for the concubines in the harem, it was normal to find someone else to serve them when it was inconvenient. But Princess Yi Ning was different. She wasn't an ordinary woman. She wasn't a woman who could be casually stuffed into a man's bed. Basically, no one had the guts to do so. In everyone's imagination, this was something that they wouldn't even think about. But someone said it so casually. To be honest, it was hard not to admire him. In this way, I still have to rely on you, Yuan. Wan, it's not that you can't do it. As long as you have the power in your husband's hands, do you want to try? Li Hongyuan tempted. Jingwan was startled. If that was really the case, then he would be directly sharing the supreme power with her. This was indeed a temptation. Not only did it come from being able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him, it also came from the unreserved love. After all, if a man had even the slightest bit of reservation towards a woman, he would definitely not do such a thing. Well, I also want to see how much power Yuan has in his hands. Well, it shouldn't disappoint you, Wan. In this way, the matter was finalized. After getting in touch with Li Hongyuan's many things, Jingwan began to contact his subordinates who worked for him. Li Hongyuan personally compiled a list for Jingwan, and this list once again surprised Jingwan. For so many years, the news about the living Hell King had not been exposed. Then Jingwan had reason to believe that these people were all loyal. As long as he was willing, he could even ascend to the throne now. although it may cause a lot of turmoil and even lead to the Qiyuan's civil war before the external troubles were resolved. Once again she mourned for his other brothers and Lu Qingdi. It was really too tragic. Li Hongyuan did not intervene, so Jingwan had to rely on her own judgment to decide who to send to carry out this matter. Of course she had to clear up the internal relationships. Li Hongyuan did not personally explain anything to her. Instead he left an Yi to her. An Yi did not have to take the initiative to say anything, but he had to answer all of Jingwan's questions without reserve. This was a big test for Jingwan. If there was something that she did not understand or if there was any carelessness, this matter could go wrong. After all, the person she was scheming against was Lu Qingdi. If something were to happen, it would not be as simple as being held accountable by Lu Qingdi. It was very likely that Li Hongyuan would be exposed. Jingwan was very clear about these things, so she could not act carelessly. He had to be very careful and cautious. Thus, just to understand this matter, Jingwan spent a few days before she finally decided on a preliminary plan. However, at this time Jingwan's heart was beating fast. Her palms were faintly sweaty. There was no other way. This matter concerned Li Hongyuan. It was impossible for her not to be nervous. It was rare for her to have the thought of retreating. Would Li Hongyuan allow her to retreat? Absolutely not. Wan, you should believe in yourself. That's not the problem. In my eyes, this is the essence of the problem. Wan, as long as you do this, it's enough. Li Hongyuan was like this. Jingwan closed her eyes and opened them again. The uneasiness in her eyes had all disappeared, leaving only firmness and fearlessness. Jingwan spent another 2 days carefully deliberating the plan. She improved it again and again. After considering all aspects, she came up with the final plan. It could be said that this was the first time that Jingwan had spent so much effort to think deeply about something. It was mentally exhausting, but when it was really completed, there was also an indescribable sense of accomplishment. When the final arrangement was made, Jingwan glanced at Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan did not say anything. He just smiled and nodded. Jingwan exhaled, called an Yi and gave orders one by one. Li Hongyuan listened quietly at the side. During the whole process of Jingwan making the plan, he did not look at it. And Jingwan was focused on the matter, so he did not disturb her. He completely played the role of the man behind her. Listening now, it was not in vain that Wan spent so much effort. As long as there were no accidents, the final result would be perfect. And this possible accident was that the executor made a mistake. This was not something that anyone could absolutely control. However, Jingwan did not need to worry about it. Speaking of it, this kind of thing originally only needed to be ordered by Li Hongyuan, and the people below would naturally find ways to complete it. The reason why Jingwan was given full authority to make the decision this time was to let Jingwan be familiar with people and things. When she was clear about all the big and small things, she only needed to move her mouth. Like Li Hongyuan, she could control the general direction. After all, if she only relied on her mouth from the beginning, then Jingwan would never be able to truly convince Li Hongyuan's subordinates. Even if they listened to Jingwan's orders, it was only because of Li Hongyuan's orders and not Jingwan herself. Therefore, Jingwan could never be considered as standing side by side with Li Hongyuan. The plan was very detailed. The people who carried out the plan only needed to be careful and didn't need to use their brains. And he also received the order quite straightforwardly. This matter, he watched the whole process. He saw Jingwan's effort. Other people might still have doubts, or they might think that what his master did to his Wang Fei was too much. Even if he doted on her from the bottom of his heart, there was no need to do this. Once, Yi might have had the same idea, but gradually this idea disappeared. Master and Wang Fei were not ordinary husband and wife. Jingwan suddenly became soft and laid on Li Hongyuan's body. Yuan, do you think it will succeed? Since it has come to this, there is no need to worry about it anymore. We just need to wait for the final result. Chapter 398. Now that things have come to this, there is no need to fuss over it. We only need to wait for the final result. Jingwan nodded. This was the only way. Unless the plan was cancelled, they could only wait. Instead of thinking about those useless things, it was better to have a good rest. Tired, Jingwan rubbed against Li Hongyuan's body like a spoiled child. If you don't do it personally, you don't know how difficult and exhausting it is. Compared to the things you do, this is just a trivial matter. Looking at how you usually deal with it, it seems as simple as eating and drinking. This kind of thing I need so many days. This difference. How can this be compared? You are not familiar with it, you don't understand it. You have to start from the beginning. Once you are familiar with it, you can slowly control it. It is just that. You make it sound simple. There are many things that require talent. A certain person was absolutely gifted in this aspect. Some people, even if they were given 10 lifetimes, they still wouldn't be able to learn it. I believe that Wan's talent in this aspect is not bad. Compared to many beginners, Wan has always done very well. Don't praise me, my tail will rise to the sky. It doesn't matter. Don't mention rising to the sky, even if you poke a hole in the sky I will hold it up. Jingwan clicked her tongue twice and reached out to pinch Li Hongyuan's face. If she was a person whose 3 views had not been molded, she didn't know how spoiled she would be. Li Hongyuan did not avoid or stop her, allowing her hands to mischief on his face. The former Wei eldest prince had asked to see Luqingdi once. Although he did not say it clearly, the meaning was almost clear. That was, their Wei princess had indeed taken a fancy to Jin Qinhuang. But their princess was definitely not the kind of woman who was not reserved and frivolous. Her upbringing, talent and manners were all good. But because it was the first awakening of love, it was hard to restrain oneself. That tone and demeanor were very helpless, completely like a good brother who doted on his younger sister. No matter what, he couldn't bear to make his younger sister sad and also faintly hoped that Luqingdi would fulfill his wish. According to him, his sister had been doted on since she was born, including her elders and her brothers. It was only because she yearned for places outside the capital of Great Wei that her imperial father couldn't bear to see her sad face, so he came to Qiyuan with her 2 elder brothers. However, he didn't expect that this trip would cause her to be filled with love. A grown girl can't be kept at home. Luqingdi didn't say anything. He just played Tai Chi with the former Grand Prince of Wei. His words didn't count. His son had a stubborn temper. If he wanted him to marry someone, he had to agree. Otherwise, he would turn the entire capital upside down. My 6th son lost his mother when he was young. It was inevitable that I would favor him more. As a result, I spoiled him more and more until he became more and more undisciplined and out of control. Even my words might not be effective. But what's done is done. I can't really punish him severely. Luqingdi was telling the truth, but to the former Grand Prince of Wei, it was full of excuses. In an ordinary family, it wasn't unusual to raise a bastard who disobeyed his father. However, as the emperor of a country, there was absolutely no possibility of his son disobeying him. Because he was the emperor first and then the father. Heaven's might couldn't be swept away and the emperor's orders couldn't be disobeyed. Of course, Luqingdi also knew that these people wouldn't believe him. So he simply used the truth to brush them off. There was no need to find excuses at all. How about this? This matter can be discussed after the emperor's birthday. What does the eldest prince think? Luqingdi said. In the end, the former Grand Prince of Wei and Luqingdi were a big level apart. Naturally, he couldn't say no. However, they probably didn't know that there was no chance to discuss it anymore. There were only 3 more days until the emperor's birthday. There were still 3 countries that hadn't arrived yet. The Western Hannu was slightly inferior to the former Wei of Qiyuan, but their customs were quite valiant. The Tsongjin was a medium-sized country, but the women's status was very high. The last one was a small country. Because it was located to the west and southwest of the Qiyuan, it was relatively far from the capital of the Qiyuan. It wasn't strange that it would be the last to arrive. In fact, it was only a day or 2 earlier. If the former Wei attracted attention because of Princess Yi Ning's great momentum, then the Tsongjin delegation was surprising because 1/3 of the entire delegation was made up of women. They were different from Princess Yi Ning in that they were real people in power. Including the delegation this time, the leaders were all women. There were women among the civil officials and there were even women among the generals. These people were real women who were not inferior to men. Although they didn't occupy half of the Tsongjin kingdom, they definitely couldn't be underestimated. When Jingwan learned about the Tsongjin kingdom, she was a bit surprised. But more than that, she admired the women. The current king of the Tsongjin kingdom was also a wise and open-minded person. Because of him, the status of the women in the Tsongjin kingdom rose again. The number of women in the Tsongjin kingdom also reached an unprecedented level. There were nearly 3 levels of women in the Tsongjin kingdom, and nearly half of them were in the upper middle class. The high status of the women in the Songjin kingdom wasn't unrelated to their founding queen, who was also a legendary woman. In the Songjin kingdom, although it was still a monogamous system, it wasn't as serious as other countries. Even the current king of the Songjin kingdom only had a handful of concubines. And in a family where women were in charge of external affairs and men were in charge of domestic affairs, concubines were basically non-existent. It was normal for men to marry and women to marry. Even if the men were weaker than the women, they wouldn't be criticized. There were male chauvinist, female chauvinist, female chauvinist, female chauvinist, female chauvinist, and male chauvinist. Compared to other countries, it might be strange, but the Songjin kingdom was very harmonious. Moreover, the Songjin kingdom had existed longer than the former way. Jingwan read about the Songjin kingdom. To be honest, she had a little bit of yearning in her heart. Li Hongyuan saw it all. In fact, in his previous life he was greatly influenced by the Songjin kingdom. Of course, Jingwan played a part in it. If Jingwan didn't exist, he would definitely scoff at the customs of the Songjin kingdom. Because it was quite a different feeling. In his previous life, the small countries around the Qiyuan were directly annexed by the Songjin kingdom, and the big countries couldn't recover for decades. The only country that wasn't touched was the Songjin kingdom. He knew that there must be people who were puzzled, but no one dared to ask him, the absolute hegemon. At that time, Jingwan wasn't around. Other than not touching the Songjin kingdom, he didn't pay much attention to other things. Wan, if you are interested in the history of the Songjin kingdom, you can contact the female officials of the Songjin kingdom after the birthday. Jingwan didn't hide it. In the last 2 days before the birthday, there were no more troubles. Although some people were more active in the capital of the Qiyuan kingdom, they still felt that it was not enough for them to visit this and that. Of course, there were also people who just wanted to walk around the capital of the Qiyuan kingdom. They wanted to see all kinds of things in the Qiyuan kingdom, especially those poor and small countries. They were probably thinking about whether they could open border trade with the Qiyuan kingdom to promote the relationship between the two countries and develop together. The emperor's birthday was also a festive day for the country. Not to mention the people outside the capital. In the capital, as the time approached, the people began to decorate the capital with lanterns and banners. It looked bright and lively, and most people had smiles on their faces. Apart from these, the most lively and talkative thing was probably the various congratulatory gifts that the officials outside the capital sent to Luqingdi. Each of them was more precious and rare than the last. No one knew how much manpower and resources were spent on these gifts, and no one knew if it was because of some of the gifts that people died. However, the people couldn't see what exactly the gifts were. They just wanted to watch the fun and praise each other. As long as they praised each other, they would definitely not go wrong. On the night before the birthday, it was snowing heavily. By the morning of the birthday, the entire capital was covered in snow. Early in the morning, there were people clearing the snow everywhere. After all, it was the birthday and there would be a lot of people entering the palace. They couldn't be delayed because of the snow on the road, and they couldn't let anything bad happen. Otherwise, if the higher-ups blamed them, they might lose their heads if they weren't careful. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan were basically ready to set off at any time. https://11/11807/7102970. Chapter 399. Based on Wan's words, next year will definitely be a bumper harvest. Li Hongyuan walked to Jingwan's side. He was also wearing a cloak over his imperial robe, but the difference was that there was a circle of black fur around the edge of the cloak. The collar was as wide as a palm, and the black satin surface was lined with scarlet. It made him look even more noble and handsome, making people unable to take their eyes off him. Jingwan raised her head slightly to look at him with a slight smile. Yuan's words make it sound like even the heavens have to give me face. Of course they have to give you face. Li Hongyuan raised his hand and gently stroked Jingwan's face. Unsurprisingly, it was a little cold, but her complexion was still the same. Perhaps because Li Hongyuan had been practicing martial arts for many years, his body was strong. At this moment, even without a hand warmer, his hand was very warm. Jingwan subconsciously rubbed against it. Speaking of which, Jingwan did not have a cold physique, but it was still not as good as Li Hongyuan, a human-shaped big heater. Hugging her at night was simply too comfortable. Li Hongyuan reached out and gently covered Jingwan's head with the hood of the cloak, then straightened both sides of her head. Jingwan's hair today was in a cross-shaped bun, with 2 buns on each side hanging down to her shoulders. Only the top of her head was a hair ornament that was larger than a palm. The main body was gold, and the shape was somewhat like layers of blooming chrysanthemums. The top layer was densely decorated with rice-sized pearls, and the tip of each petal was either naturally curved or leisurely stretched. Some of the tips even had a few thin tassels hanging down. Below the tassels were sparkling gemstones which looked exceptionally beautiful. Obviously, when making the cloak they had already taken into consideration the fact that it would be combed into a high bun, so naturally, there would not be a situation where it would be too tight and messed up the hair ornament. Jingwan noticed that Li Hongyuan did not withdraw his hand for a long time and was puzzled. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" "No, I just think that Wanwan is very beautiful. There is no one more beautiful than Wanwan in the world." Li Hongyuan's voice was very soft, but his words were very sincere. Jingwan's cheeks heated up. She smiled and said, "Why not? Isn't it right in front of me?" Her husband's female disguise would definitely beat up all the women, and his normal disguise would beat up all the men. When God created someone, he must have been extremely biased. Li Hongyuan gently scratched Jingwan's nose. "No matter who they are, no matter what they wear, in my eyes they can't compare to you, Wanwan." Well, this was a typical case of beauty being in the eye of the beholder. "In my eyes, in my heart, Yuan is also the most handsome." It wasn't just that beauty was in the eye of the beholder. In the eyes of too many people he was the most handsome. Li Hongyuan smiled and kissed her. This time the kiss fell on her forehead. "Let's go. It's time to go to the palace." Jingwan nodded. Li Hongyuan held her hand and walked out of the main courtyard unhurriedly. The couple walked forward hand in hand and whispered along the way. Behind them, Nanny Gong and Eunuch Mu were holding the birthday gift for Luqingdi. Nanny Gong looked as usual, but Eunuch Mu's expression was a little strange. What? Could this thing really be taken out? The other courtiers were the same as the officials outside the capital. They had sent their gifts to the palace early and registered them. However, the princes and their envoys were different. They had to present their gifts in public. The others had all kinds of rare treasures. Only their master had taken out this thing. Wasn't it a little too much? Eunuch Mu shook his head and got rid of the mess in his mind. The gift was prepared by the princess and the prince had seen it in person. He didn't say anything, which meant that there was nothing wrong with the gift. It looked so inconspicuous, so there must be a special meaning. Sure enough, he was too stupid to understand it at all. The prince, in full ceremonial clothes, marched into the palace in a mighty manner. As the emperor's son, when entering the palace, he naturally didn't have to wait in line like the courtiers and their families. In such a weather, the longer he stayed outside, the colder he would be. Jingwan was actually a little worried about Madame Luo's health. But her grandfather was the minister of the Ministry of Personnel. As his family, the order of entering the palace was also according to the status of Luo Peishan. If she wanted to know, she didn't have to wait too long. So she was a little relieved. Speaking of which, the whole process of the birthday celebration would take a long time. According to the status and gender, it was definitely a huge project to go one by one. Of course, it was not easy to see Luqingdi's face just because they could celebrate his birthday. So one could imagine how big the queue was. Moreover, since he was the emperor, he naturally had to keep a distance. Ordinary people couldn't get close to him easily. According to the rules, Li Hongyuan took Jingwan to the Jade Palace first to visit Imperial Concubine Su. At this moment, Imperial Concubine Su's place was also quite lively. In the entire Imperial harem, Imperial Concubine Su had the most children. She had 3 children, and now that they were all married, it was only natural that her family would become even more flourishing and flourishing. It should be known that other concubines were lucky enough to have 2 children. In fact, in Luqingdi's harem, there were only a few who had 2 children. Imperial Concubine Su was the only one who had survived until now and had a son. Imperial Concubine Su didn't even have 2 biological sons. Imperial Concubine Su could still raise Li Hongyuan when she had a son. In Luqingdi's eyes, she had a good relationship with the imperial noble consort. More importantly, Imperial Concubine Su was the only one who knew the truth. No one was more suitable than her to raise Li Hongyuan. Other people had 2 concubines who raised 2 princesses. They were still young. Imperial Concubine Su was very confident in this point. Therefore, she was in a good mood when she saw the younger generation gathered in the hall. Especially when she saw Li Hongyuan, her smile became more obvious. But when she saw Jingwan beside him, her smile unconsciously faded a little. Li Hongyuan was now estranged from imperial concubine Su. Sometimes he didn't bother to act seriously anymore. Compared with the outside, the hall was quite warm. Li Hongyuan took off his cloak and gave it to Qingzhu. He turned a blind eye to the palace maid who came forward and took the job from Jingwan. He put down her hood, took off his cloak and handed it to Baishao, who stepped forward. His movements were natural and smooth, as if he was used to it. In some people's eyes, this scene was dazzling. It should be known that under normal circumstances, it was normal for Li Hongyuan and Jingwan to switch roles. The most annoying thing was that Jingwan took it for granted. Perhaps because the atmosphere was too harmonious, people couldn't stand it or felt jealous. Oh, sixth brother is so good to sixth sister-in-law. No wonder Princess Yining of the former Wei liked sixth brother at first sight. Princess Yining has a unique insight. I think sixth brother will also have a tender and protective heart for the fairer sex, Princess Min Xiang said coquettishly. Of course Prince is good. It's just that he doesn't have a good insight. Jingwan smiled faintly. She didn't care at all that Princess Min Xiang said to annoy her. Probably in everyone's eyes, the former Princess Yining of the Wei Kingdom would become Li Hongyuan's concubine. After all, no one would refuse such a thing. But who would it belong to? They would probably find out tomorrow. Li Hongyuan swept a glance at Princess Min Xiang. Min Xiang is married and your mouth has become mean. Without Mu Fei's constant teaching, you've released your true nature. Or is there a problem with your husband's family and you've been influenced by them? These words didn't have a single curse word, but it made Princess Min Xiang's expression turn ugly. Li Hongyuan acted as if he didn't see it. There's one thing that outsiders should know. Whether this woman can enter Jin Qinhuang Fu or not, it's up to me, Li Hongyuan. If any woman likes Ben Wang, she can enter Jin Qinhuang Fu. What does she think Ben Wang is? Li Hongyuan's words were like a knife that directly stabbed into Prince Rui's heart. Only Li Hongyuan could say these words as if it was a matter of course. They didn't even dare to touch it. They were directly appointed by Laozi to be the concubine of a rival power. They didn't dare to utter a word and had to obediently bring her into the Fu. If they didn't like her, they couldn't directly kill her. Although everyone knew that they had been abandoned, but if they were killed, the family behind them, the people that their family was loyal to, would definitely make a big fuss about it. They couldn't wait to bite a few pieces of meat off his body. It would be best if they could bite him to death. According to Li Hongyuan's words, what were they? What were they? Imperial Consort Su's heart was stifled and flustered. This kind of situation was something that she absolutely didn't want to see. She felt that this son of hers was getting further and further away from her. Although she knew the reason, she felt that it wasn't the real reason. However, the truth was right in front of her eyes. She couldn't find the source of that baseless feeling. After that, Jingwan was innocently implicated. Alright, in essence, Jingwan wasn't innocent. Li Hongyuan's change in attitude was indeed due to Jingwan's factor. Imperial Consort Su reprimanded Princess Min Xiang. In reality, Imperial Consort Su didn't feel that her daughter had said anything wrong. She was just doing it for her son to see. Princess Min Xiang felt wronged, but now that her mother's expression was very ugly, she didn't dare to say anything. In her heart, she naturally bore a grudge against Jingwan. That's right, the source of evil was clearly Li Hongyuan. Towards Li Hongyuan, she didn't even dare to bear a grudge. Jingwan just watched silently and resolutely didn't say a word about this kind of family drama. She just felt that her husband was really too powerful. As the father, he was rushing to be abused. As the mother, she had to act according to his mood. It was really enough. After that, the atmosphere wasn't very good. However, Li Hongyuan and Jingwan weren't affected at all. It was as if they were here to take a rest. In such a depressing atmosphere, Imperial Consort Su pulled Li Hongyuan to talk. Even if Li Hongyuan still gave her face, the atmosphere couldn't be eased. It seemed that there was really no way to return to the original state. Imperial Consort Su was very depressed. Her good mood at the beginning was completely destroyed. She simply invited her maternal family, the in-laws of her 3 children, or the womenfolk of her husband's family to the Jade Essence Palace. Even if she wasn't in the mood to talk to them, she could just let her daughter-in-law and son-in-law deal with it. It was better than this suffocating feeling. Jingwan was naturally happy to be able to see her grandmother. She threw everything else aside. Who was Madame Luo? Naturally, she could feel that the atmosphere here wasn't right. However, after secretly looking at the expressions of her granddaughter and grandson-in-law, she was relieved and didn't care about anything else. From this point of view, Madame Luo was actually a relaxed person. No matter how cold it was outside, many people in this hall still felt warm physically and mentally. Unknowingly, it was time for everyone to go and celebrate Emperor Lucindi's birthday. First, it was the courtiers, then the madams, then the concubines, then Emperor Lucindi's daughter-in-law and grandchildren, followed by the princes and finally the envoys of other countries. The relatives of the imperial family were divided into the first two rows. There were a lot of people, but in fact only a few people could enter the hall to celebrate the birthday. This kind of thing had been arranged. Whoever it was would go, and the palace servants would naturally guide them, so there was no need to worry at all. Jingwan saw Madame Luo off and couldn't do anything else. She could only tell the palace servants to be careful, and the palace servants didn't dare to neglect. In fact, the whole process took longer than Jingwan expected. When noble consort Su left, Jingwan was sure that it was almost their turn. Speaking of which, Emperor Lucindi only had a few daughters-in-law. One wave was enough. Sixth sister-in-law, let's go. It's our turn. Princess Rui said with a chuckle. Jingwan nodded. Speaking of which, they were just going through the motions. They knelt down, bowed, and said a few auspicious words. The focus was not as important as the imperial grandchildren. As for the concubines in front of them, in fact they were just SOSO. If Emperor Lucindi was still young, perhaps he could hold a banquet before and after the banquet to let the concubines show off to their heart's content. Unfortunately, the imperial grandchildren were still young. Most of the things sent to them were prepared by their mother, so there was nothing to see. https://www.yanguiwo.com/11/11807/7210814 www.yanguiwo.com Biku Pavilion M Yanguiwo.com Chapter 400. Unlike the others, the envoys from various countries had been in the hall since the beginning. Letting them watch the whole process was a way to show off their power. Jingwan and the others had also taken their seats after the birthday greetings. Qianshan Hall was a special place for the imperial court. Its layout was different from other places. There was enough space on the east and west sides. Of course, even so, only a portion of the people could sit inside. Even if there were more places, those who were not of high status would not have a place to stand. There were pillars and carved beams. At this moment the seats were arranged neatly. There were 10 rectangular tables, 3 on the east and 2 on the south. The tables were low. After sitting down it was almost the same as kneeling. This was a big challenge to etiquette. The purpose of setting up such seats was to see some countries make a fool of themselves. The princes had to present their birthday gifts one by one, so everyone took their seats first. Qiyuan did not have a crown prince. Prince Kong was the head of the legal family. It was understandable that the princes would start with her. Speaking of which, Prince Kong had been keeping a low profile recently because of the Empress's poor health. He basically did not cause any rash and reckless things. He worked seriously and tried not to stand out. The people in the entire faction rarely caused trouble for the other factions. It was enough to show how important the Empress was to the entire faction. The Empress was not energetic. This time the birthday gift was prepared by Prince Kong himself. Of course, it was said that he prepared it himself. In fact, it was the result of brainstorming. However, the birthday gift was given to the Empress in advance. Although she did not see the real thing, the Empress praised Prince Kong after hearing the description. It was rare for her. Although there was a big gap between the mother and son, and Prince Kong even knew that he was just a chess piece in his mother's hand, they did not completely fall out. After all, they needed each other. At this moment there was no room for internal strife. It was important to unite against the outside world. In this way, Prince Kong could not help but feel happy that he could get his mother's approval. A box that was half the height of a person was carefully carried in. After it was opened, a blue and white porcelain vase that was about the same height as the box was taken out from the soft stuffing. The vase did not look obvious, but if one looked closely they would find that it was definitely not simple. Its body was thick and heavy and the inside of the vase was full of glaze. The characters on the white background were different, but they were all the same word: longevity. The size of the characters followed the shape of the object. It was neat and natural, graceful and elegant. Some of the characters were round, some were square, some were triangular, and some were drawn in the shape of a peach. Some were in the shape of a small hill, which meant that one's life was as long as the southern mountain. Some were in the shape of a winding and complicated line, which meant that one's lifespan was endless. Imperial Father, this is the 10,000 longevity inscription venerable. There are 2 longevity inscriptions on the top of the venerable mouth, 77 words per week. There are 48 words per week on the side of the mouth and the outer edge of the circle feet. There are 75 vertical lines on the venerable body, and 130 horizontal lines, totaling 10,000 words. Long live His Majesty. Prince Kong bowed deeply as he spoke. As the Emperor receiving such a gift at his birthday banquet, there was no doubt that he was in a very good mood. He smiled brightly and said a few words. He then looked at the expressions of the other envoys. Some were stunned, some were surprised, and some were jealous. His mood couldn't help but become even better. One must know that to make such a large piece of porcelain, one must have superb porcelain burning skills. Such a bright blue and white hair color must be painted with the best blue and white color. Moreover, to make such a complicated and colorful longevity character, one must have a profound knowledge of writing. Such an extraordinary overall plan showed his son's respect for him. No matter how one looked at it, it was very honorable. Qi Yuan's various silks and porcelain had always been the favorite of other countries. The only country that could match the craftsmanship of Qi Yuan was probably the former Wei. However, looking at the unpleasant expressions of the people from the former Wei, one could almost conclude that the craftsmanship of this piece of porcelain was perhaps not even the former Wei could produce. My son is very thoughtful. Quickly rise. Reward. Prince Kong stood up. Thank you, Imperial Father. The joy in his heart could hardly be concealed. During this period of time he had been suppressed. When he saw some people jumping around in front of him, he could finally hold his head high. His gaze seemed to sweep across his brothers with a hint of provocation in it. In fact, there were not many princes who looked normal, including their mother, who was also anxious and secretly resentful. He probably didn't expect Li Hongyi to give out such a meaningful treasure. In the past few years, Li Hongyi had always given out things that were stable. They weren't outstanding, but they wouldn't go wrong either. Why was he emptying his mind this year? Many people thought about it and realized the crux of the matter. In the Jiangnan incident, Prince Kong had suffered the heaviest loss. Later, the Empress was seriously ill. Their faction seemed to have lost its backbone. Under such circumstances, they naturally had to think of a way to restore the Emperor's heart. It was no wonder that such an ingenious object existed. Next was the third prince, Prince Rui Li Hongming. In contrast, he was very calm. It seemed that he didn't care about the longevity tattoo venerable, but also seemed to be very confident in his own thing. In this way, it was inevitable that some people would be embarrassed again. Li Hongyi took his seat and Li Hongming stood up. Their eyes met in the air. One smiled calmly and the other smiled proudly. In the blink of an eye, they fought back and forth a few times. Li Hongming saluted and clapped his hands. His birthday gift was also carried in. It was like a cage covered with red silk. Everyone was surprised. Looking at it, it should be a living thing. Li Hongming didn't keep people guessing. He directly lifted the red silk. Seeing the dongbao inside, many people gasped. It was a white turtle as big as a millstone. Turtles had always been a symbol of longevity. Such a white turtle was even more rare and was called an auspicious sign. It was no wonder that Prince Rui was so calm. Since the longevity tattoo venerable could produce one, there must be a second one. But this auspicious sign was different. It might not be seen in 1,000 years. I wish Father a long life, Li Hongming said calmly. His bearing was more and more calm. This thing was better than Li Hongyi's. His words and actions were also better. Many ministers couldn't help but nod, secretly praising him. Good. Li Qingdi's smile became more and more obvious. Reward. Although his words were few, his expression already explained everything. At this time, Li Hongyi's face also turned green. He clenched his fists and cursed Li Hongming in his heart. But he was also glad that he was first. The only one who felt strange was probably Jingwan. Sick turtle. The Gong Prince wasn't so lucky. Recently, because of Qin Shufei holding the Phoenix Seal, he was very active. Now, with 2 people in front of him, his things were insignificant. https://11/11807/7210815. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.